What would you do if, suddenly, you lost everything, your strength, your vitality, and even the power of your own body? It's a question that has plagued many as they age. For some, it's the first gray hairs that signal the inevitable march of time. For others, it might be the first sign of weakness, a sudden pull in the muscle or an aching joint that doesn't seem to recover like it used to. But what if it didn't have to be this way? What if there was a way to maintain your strength, to keep your muscles vibrant and strong well into your 60s, and beyond? What if something as simple as the food you ate could change the way your body aged? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? For Elon Musk, the question of aging had become more than just a thought, it was a challenge. A challenge not just of his mind and spirit, but of his body. As a man known for pushing boundaries in space and technology, the idea of aging without the vitality to keep up with his dreams was something he couldn't ignore. It all started on an ordinary day in 2025. Elon Musk had just turned 53, and though he was still in excellent shape for his age, something felt different. He had been feeling the subtle effects of aging creeping in. His energy levels weren't what they used to be, and his usual workouts were beginning to feel more like a chore than a passion. One morning, after a routine set of push-ups and weightlifting, he noticed something that alarmed him. His muscles weren't recovering the way they had in the past. It was as if his body was becoming less responsive to the same efforts, less able to keep up with his demands. It wasn't a huge change, just a small shift, but it was enough to make him wonder. Was this it? Was his body beginning to betray him? And more importantly, how could he stop it? For years, Musk had been obsessed with the idea of extending human life and enhancing the human condition. He'd put billions into space exploration with the ultimate goal of making humanity a multiplanetary species, and with that, ensuring its longevity. He'd invested heavily in technology that could improve mental capabilities and energy efficiency. But this was different. This wasn't about technology or space. This was about the raw, biological reality that no one could escape. The truth hit him hard, aging was inevitable, but did it have to come with so much decline? Determined not to let age define his limitations, Musk began searching for answers. He started with the basics, diet and nutrition. His usual daily routine consisted of a mix of quick meals and high-protein, high-energy foods, but he wasn't entirely sure if those were the right choices for someone his age. After all, being an entrepreneur, innovator, and inventor meant that his body had always been a tool for productivity, but it also meant that his time was limited, and he wasn't the best when it came to taking care of it. He needed to do better. But what could he do? The human body, especially after 60, begins to lose muscle mass at a rate that accelerates year after year. In fact, it's been shown that around 30% of people over 60 suffer from sarcopenia, muscle loss due to aging. No matter how hard they tried, no matter how much they worked out, the natural processes of aging were eating away at their strength. And for Musk, who had always prided himself on being in control, this was a bitter pill to swallow. So, he turned to the one thing he could always rely on, science. Musk dove deep into the latest research, reading everything he could find on how nutrition affected muscle maintenance and aging. What he found was surprising. There were foods, specific nutrients, and even new approaches to eating that could make a real difference in the way the body aged. One thing led to another, and soon Musk was meeting with world-renowned nutritionists, scientists, and health experts. What they told him changed everything he thought he knew about aging. There were, in fact, ways to slow the loss of muscle mass, keep muscles stronger for longer, and even reverse some of the damage done by years of neglect. But what were these miracle foods? Before long, Musk realized that his journey into the science of muscle health was more than just personal, it was a mission that could benefit millions of people around the world. So, he set out to find the 3 essential foods that would help keep muscles strong, no matter how old you were. This quest to combat aging wasn't going to be easy. In fact, the road ahead would be filled with skepticism, struggles, and conflict, both from others and from within. Musk had made countless breakthroughs in his life, but this was something entirely different. It wasn't about sending rockets into space. It was about sending a message to the world that aging didn't have to be a slow decline into frailty. As Musk delved deeper into his research, he began to realize that there was something much bigger at stake than just his own health. He was on the verge of discovering the key to preserving the strength of muscles long into the golden years, and he couldn't keep it to himself. This discovery, he believed, would not only change his life but could change the lives of people everywhere. But first, he needed to find the proof. He needed to test the science behind these foods. Could they truly make a difference? And if so, how could he convince the world? Stay tuned. What Musk would soon discover would surprise even him. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk's journey toward his current identity didn't begin in a laboratory or a sleek office at Tesla. It began much earlier, with a boy who grew up in Pretoria, South Africa, the son of a Canadian mother and a South African father. From a young age, Musk showed signs of an inquisitive mind. His earliest fascination was with technology and science fiction, a passion that led him to read voraciously. By the time he was 12, he had taught himself computer programming and sold a game called Blaster to a computer magazine for around $500. Yet, even though he was intellectually gifted, Musk's early years were far from idyllic. His parents' marriage was strained, and young Elon often found himself in the midst of conflict. His father, Errol Musk, was an intelligent but distant figure, and his relationship with Elon was, at best, strained. Musk later described his father as a brilliant but troubled person. His mother, May, was an artist and dietitian who pushed him to explore his intellect but also encouraged him to live a healthy lifestyle. Despite a rocky family life, Musk's ambition and determination were undeniable. His relationship with his mother, in particular, shaped much of his personal philosophy. She taught him the importance of hard work, discipline, and maintaining physical health, especially as the years began to take their toll. But as a child, Musk was more interested in achieving intellectual feats than caring for his body. It wasn't until later in life that he truly began to realize the profound importance of his physical health in the pursuit of his goals. Musk's path to fame and fortune would be paved with relentless pursuit and groundbreaking innovations. After leaving South Africa and studying at Queen's University in Canada and later transferring to the University of Pennsylvania, Musk set his sights on the American dream. He co-founded Zip2X.com, which eventually became PayPal, and later, Tesla and SpaceX. With each successful venture, his influence expanded, and his wealth followed suit. But despite his numerous accomplishments, Musk had always faced a personal dilemma. As his fame and wealth grew, so did the demands on his time and energy. Late nights spent working, endless meetings, and travel took a toll on his body. The physical toll of managing multiple companies, overseeing the launch of spacecraft, and pushing the boundaries of automotive technology led to a noticeable decline in his health, something he never talked about publicly. It was at the age of 50 that Musk first started noticing the subtle changes in his body. For the first time, he felt the effects of long hours and little sleep. He'd always maintained a fairly rigorous workout regimen, but the benefits seemed to fade faster than before. His muscles didn't recover as quickly after a workout. His energy levels dropped, and there were moments where even climbing a flight of stairs seemed like more effort than it should have been. It was difficult for Musk to admit. After all, he was known for defying expectations, launching electric cars, landing rockets back on Earth, and leading a private space race with SpaceX. Yet the idea of aging and its inevitable physical consequences didn't quite fit into his narrative of constant innovation and boundless energy. He wasn't ready to face the fact that time might be catching up with him. But Musk was never the type to accept limitations. As much as he hated to admit it, he was becoming more aware of his aging body. Yet, it wasn't the physical changes alone that frustrated him. It was the realization that even his extraordinary intellect couldn't conquer this natural process. For the first time in his life, Musk faced something he couldn't solve with technology alone. Around that time, he began to look deeper into the science of aging. It wasn't long before he learned that muscle loss, a natural part of the aging process, had significant consequences on overall health. As we age, we lose muscle mass, especially after the age of 30, and the rate of decline accelerates after 60. This muscle loss isn't just cosmetic, it can lead to frailty, increased risk of falls, and decreased overall quality of life. That's when the idea started to form. What if the key to defying age wasn't in technological advancements but in something as simple, and as ancient, as food? While Musk's mind had always been focused on the future, this new idea pushed him to explore the forgotten power of ancient wisdom. What if the answer to longevity had been right in front of him all along? What if the foods that humans had eaten for centuries could be harnessed to preserve muscle mass, extend vitality, and keep the body strong well into the later years? This realization came as a wake-up call for Musk, and he began to look into the nutritional science that could unlock the secret to sustaining his body's strength. He'd spent so much of his life focusing on technology, space, and innovation that he'd neglected one fundamental truth: the body is the most sophisticated machine of all. As Musk embarked on his quest to uncover the foods that would keep muscles strong after 60, he began revisiting his own history with diet and health. Musk had always been an advocate for the mind-body connection, but it wasn't until he personally experienced the frustrations of aging that he began to fully appreciate the need for balance. After all, a life without vitality is a life unfulfilled, and Musk's ultimate goal was never just about success in business. It was about making life itself better for everyone, including himself. Thus began the next phase of Musk's life, a journey into the world of nutrition, muscle health, and longevity. But this time, it wasn't about technology or rocket ships. It was about discovering a way to beat aging from within. And in typical Elon Musk fashion, once he set his mind to something, there was no turning back. He was determined to find the answer. Would food, combined with the right nutrients, be the key to preserving strength as he aged? This was a question that Musk had to answer, both for himself and for the world. The world that had watched him change the course of history with his inventions might soon see him lead the charge on something even more personal: the secret to aging well. And so, with that question in mind, Elon Musk set off on a new adventure, a quest not for the stars, but for a way to make the human body as strong and enduring as his vision of the future. Elon Musk had conquered many challenges in his life. He built the world's most successful electric car company, revolutionized space travel, and even spearheaded the effort to colonize Mars. But as he dove deeper into the science of aging and muscle health, he faced a new challenge that no amount of technology or ambition could solve: his body's limitations. Musk was no stranger to stress. In fact, he thrived on it. The adrenaline rush of meeting impossible deadlines, the thrill of facing seemingly insurmountable odds, the mental challenges that came with building companies from the ground up, these were the things that kept him going. But physical limitations were different. They didn't respect deadlines. They didn't care how many billions he had or how many groundbreaking inventions he had created. His muscles were starting to let him down, and no amount of mental fortitude could change that. The first signs of this decline were subtle, like the missed lifts at the gym or the occasional muscle cramp that lingered longer than it used to. At first, Musk brushed it off. He was busy, after all. Running multiple companies, making critical decisions about space missions, and managing his numerous projects left him little time for anything else. But as the days passed, the signs became harder to ignore. The most alarming symptom came after a particularly long day at SpaceX headquarters. He had spent hours in meetings, only pausing to grab a protein shake before jumping into the next task. By the time he finally returned home late that evening, Musk felt drained, as though his body had given all it could. His muscles, once his strength, now seemed to be betraying him. He could feel the stiffness in his joints and the soreness in his arms, even though he had only lifted moderate weights that morning. As he lay in bed that night, exhausted and frustrated, he couldn't help but think about the road ahead. What was the point of all his achievements if his body couldn't keep up? What good was a brilliant mind if it was trapped in a body that was slowing down, one muscle at a time? This was more than just a personal frustration, it was a growing fear. Musk, who had spent his life pushing boundaries, now found himself facing a boundary that couldn't be pushed. The reality of aging had hit him like a ton of bricks, and it was something he couldn't outsmart with technology alone. For the first time, Musk felt truly vulnerable. And so, he set out on a new mission. This time, it wasn't about sending humans to Mars or launching rockets into space. It was about understanding the science of muscle health, aging, and what he could do to slow it down. Musk knew that the key to staying strong wasn't going to be found in the latest exercise craze or a cutting-edge fitness program. It was about understanding the biological processes at play and using science to work with his body, not against it. As he began researching, Musk discovered a wealth of information on sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass that begins in the 30s and accelerates with age. What struck him most was the fact that this wasn't just a cosmetic issue. Muscle loss could lead to serious health consequences, such as reduced mobility, increased risk of falls, and even a weakened immune system. Musk knew that if he was going to maintain his strength and vitality, he had to address this issue head-on. But here's the problem: despite all the advancements in science and technology, most people, Musk included, were still woefully uninformed about the most effective ways to combat muscle loss. Sure, there were protein supplements and workout programs, but none of them seemed to offer a sustainable solution for keeping muscles strong and healthy as you aged. Musk had always prided himself on his analytical approach to problem solving, but this was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. He reached out to experts in the field, nutritionists, aging specialists, and even doctors who had studied the effects of diet on muscle health. They all confirmed the same thing: it wasn't just about lifting weights or taking protein shakes. The key to maintaining muscle mass after 60 was in the food you ate. But what food could make a difference? Musk wasn't satisfied with just vague advice. He needed answers. He needed the specifics, the essential foods that could prevent muscle loss and keep his body strong for years to come. He wasn't just looking for a quick fix, he wanted something that could sustain him over the long term. And so, his quest to find these magic foods began. The first obstacle he encountered was the overwhelming amount of information out there. There were thousands of conflicting opinions on what constituted a healthy diet, and even more claims about the best foods for muscle health. It was dizzying. Some experts recommended high-protein diets, while others emphasized plant-based foods or supplements. And yet, despite all the noise, there didn't seem to be one clear, universally accepted answer. Frustrated but determined, Musk decided to take matters into his own hands. He began conducting his own experiments, carefully tracking his diet and workouts. He logged everything: the meals he ate, the time of day he ate them, how his body responded. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just focused on what was best for his companies or his rockets, he was focused on what was best for his body. But as Musk began to make changes to his diet, he found himself facing skepticism from those around him. His colleagues at Tesla and SpaceX, who had seen him launch rockets into space, were doubtful. They couldn't understand why someone who had achieved so much in life was suddenly so focused on something as simple as diet. "You're trying to fix your muscles with food, Elon?" one of them asked, half joking, half serious. Musk didn't take offense. He had always been the kind of person who embraced challenge, especially when it came from those who didn't believe in him. But the comments stung. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about proving something. A solution not just for himself, but for millions of people facing the same battle against aging. Despite the doubts of others, Musk persisted. He dug deeper, reaching out to leading scientists and health experts who specialized in aging and muscle health. Slowly, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. There were foods, specific nutrients, that, when consumed regularly, could help preserve muscle strength and even reverse some of the damage caused by years of aging. It wasn't a miracle cure, but it was a start. Musk realized that the solution was going to be more complex than simply popping a pill or drinking a protein shake. It required a complete shift in his understanding of diet, aging, and muscle health. And while the road ahead was still uncertain, one thing was clear: this wasn't a battle Musk was willing to lose. The journey to discover the 3 essential foods that could keep muscles strong after 60 was only just beginning. The journey into the world of muscle health and aging wasn't one Elon Musk had planned for. It was a path he stumbled upon out of sheer necessity. His own body was showing signs of wear and tear, and his mind, ever the problem solver, needed a solution. But as he plunged deeper into the world of nutrition, a new revelation began to unfold. The more he learned, the more he understood that muscle health wasn't just about physical exercise. It was about how you fueled your body, how you treated it on the inside, and how you adjusted your habits to combat the effects of aging. Musk wasn't interested in quick fixes or trendy diets. He wasn't the type to rely on fads. Instead, he was determined to understand the science behind aging and nutrition in a way that few had attempted. What were the biological mechanisms that caused muscles to deteriorate with age? Could diet truly make a difference in maintaining muscle mass and strength as people grew older? And if so, what were the essential foods that had the power to slow, or even reverse, muscle loss? The first step of Musk's journey was understanding sarcopenia, the age-related decline in muscle mass. As he researched, he learned that muscle loss begins at around the age of 30 and accelerates in the years following. By the time people reach 60, they can have as much as 30% less muscle mass than they did when they were younger. For Musk, this was a sobering realization. He understood that if he wanted to maintain his strength into his later years, he would need to take action now, before it was too late. But Musk's path to finding the right foods wasn't straightforward. There was no definitive list of foods to prevent muscle loss, and much of the existing research seemed to be contradictory. Some nutritionists advocated for high-protein diets, while others stressed the importance of plant-based foods, antioxidants, and healthy fats. Musk's frustration grew as he waded through conflicting advice. One evening, after hours of research, Musk found himself face to face with a particular article written by a nutritionist who had worked extensively with elderly patients. The article emphasized the importance of 3 specific nutrients in preventing muscle loss: protein, omega-3 fatty acids, and vitamin D. These nutrients, according to the expert, were not only crucial for muscle health but also for overall vitality and strength in older adults. Protein, as Musk knew, was the building block of muscles. But it wasn't just about eating protein, it was about getting the right kinds of protein, particularly those that were rich in amino acids like leucine, which is known to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. While many people turned to protein shakes, Musk was learning that whole foods were far more beneficial. Omega-3 fatty acids, commonly found in fatty fish like salmon and mackerel, had been shown to have anti-inflammatory effects and to support muscle protein synthesis. These healthy fats not only helped preserve muscle mass but also improved joint health, which Musk had come to realize was crucial as the body aged. Omega-3s seemed to be the secret ingredient for muscle maintenance and recovery. The third nutrient Musk discovered was vitamin D. While most people associated vitamin D with bone health, it played an equally important role in muscle function. Research had shown that people with low levels of vitamin D were more likely to experience muscle weakness and pain. Musk realized that this nutrient could be a game changer. If he could find a way to ensure he was getting the right amount of vitamin D, he might be able to boost his muscle strength and slow down the effects of aging. But as Musk began to put together his new nutritional strategy, there was another challenge: practicality. He wasn't just looking for a quick fix, he needed a sustainable routine, something that would be easy to integrate into his hectic lifestyle. And that's when he realized the importance of combining these 3 nutrients into his daily diet. He didn't need to take pills or supplements, he just needed to make the right choices when it came to food. The first food on Musk's list was fatty fish, rich in both protein and omega-3s. Salmon, mackerel, and sardines quickly became staples in his diet. Alongside that, he added eggs, which were rich in protein and also a great source of vitamin D. He also turned to plant-based sources of protein, like lentils and quinoa, to balance his meals and get a variety of amino acids. In addition to his diet, Musk made sure to get regular sun exposure to boost his vitamin D levels naturally. Though it wasn't always easy with his busy schedule, he made it a point to spend time outside every day, even if it was just for a short walk in the morning sun. Vitamin D wasn't just something he wanted to consume, it was something he needed to absorb from the world around him. As Musk began to incorporate these foods into his diet, he started to notice subtle but significant changes. His energy levels improved, and his workouts, while still challenging, felt more rewarding. His muscles weren't recovering as quickly as they did in his younger years, but they were holding up better than before. There was a sense of strength he hadn't experienced in months. Despite the positive changes, Musk couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. His body felt better, but he knew there was still work to do. The science of muscle maintenance, especially in older adults, was still in its infancy. Musk was determined to continue his research, digging deeper into the biochemistry of aging and nutrition. But his journey took an unexpected turn. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Musk found himself sitting at his desk, pondering the future. His mind kept returning to the question, what if the foods he had chosen were just the beginning? What if there were other factors, like exercise, sleep, and stress management, that could help slow aging and preserve muscle strength even further? Determined to find out, Musk called up a few of his trusted experts. He wasn't just interested in muscle-building foods anymore, he wanted to understand the complete picture. Could the right balance of diet, exercise, and sleep really allow him to stay strong, not just for a few months, but for the years ahead? And so, his research expanded. He dug into the benefits of resistance training and the role sleep played in muscle recovery. He learned that sleep was just as important for muscle health as diet and exercise. Without enough sleep, the body couldn't recover properly, and muscle breakdown was more likely. As Musk integrated these new insights into his routine, he started to see even more improvement. But with every discovery, Musk's desire to find the perfect solution grew stronger. He knew there was no quick fix, no single food or exercise that could keep him young forever. Instead, it was about balance, consistency, and the willingness to constantly learn and adapt. As he continued on this unexpected journey, Musk began to realize something even more profound: the pursuit of lasting health and strength wasn't just about defying aging. It was about redefining what it meant to live well as you grew older, and in that process, finding a new way to think about aging itself. The road ahead was long, but for the first time, Musk felt a sense of hope. The discovery of these essential foods was just the beginning. He now had the tools to not only preserve his own vitality but also to help others do the same. The world was changing, and Elon Musk was determined to be part of the change, one meal at a time. Elon Musk's journey to maintaining his muscle health had begun as a personal quest, a way to solve a problem he had never truly considered before. But as the weeks passed and the changes in his body became more noticeable, something else began to emerge: an emotional transformation. The more he learned about his body and how it aged, the more he reflected on his life, his ambitions, and the legacy he hoped to leave behind. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was deeply personal. Musk had spent decades building companies, launching rockets, and pushing the boundaries of what was possible, often at the cost of his own well-being. Now, as he faced the inevitability of aging, he began to wonder, what did it all really mean if he couldn't live long enough to see the long-term fruits of his labor? The Mars mission, the electric cars, the future of humanity, what was the point if he wasn't around to witness it? He had always prided himself on his ability to take risks, to face the unknown with confidence and resilience. But when it came to aging and muscle loss, he was encountering something he couldn't control with his usual tactics. It was as if the universe had thrown a new challenge in his way, one that required a different kind of approach. This wasn't something that could be solved with a rocket launch or a new AI breakthrough. This was something far more fundamental: the human body and the reality of time. For the first time in his life, Musk felt vulnerable. He had always relied on his intellect and his work ethic to push through obstacles, but this felt different. The physical limitations were something even his sharp mind couldn't outsmart. The signs of muscle loss were clear, and no amount of innovation could reverse the natural course of aging. The more he learned about his body, the more he realized how little control he had over some aspects of it. He was facing the undeniable truth that time, for all its potential, was an enemy that no technology could defeat. One morning, after a particularly grueling workout that left him feeling more defeated than usual, Musk sat in his office at SpaceX. His body was sore in places it hadn't been before, and it was starting to sink in. His muscles weren't recovering as quickly. Despite the changes he had made to his diet and exercise routine, the inevitable process of aging was creeping up on him, relentless and unyielding. He thought about his life, the impact he hoped to make, and the future of his companies. Am I doing enough? He wondered aloud to himself, feeling the weight of the question press down on him. Am I pushing myself to the limit in every area, or am I just chasing an idea that's out of my grasp? His mind raced, as it often did when faced with a challenge. But this time, the thoughts didn't come with a solution. Instead, they were filled with doubt about his legacy, his health, and his future. In that moment, Musk understood something he hadn't before. Success wasn't just about what you could achieve in your prime, but how you maintained that vitality throughout your life. To be able to sustain greatness, he realized, you had to take care of yourself, not just mentally, but physically, too. It wasn't just about being strong in the moment, it was about being strong enough to continue pushing forward for years to come. His muscles weren't just the physical powerhouses he had relied on to power through difficult days, they were symbols of his willpower and drive. And right now, they were starting to fail him. Musk knew that aging wasn't something to fear, it was simply another stage of life. But accepting it as part of the natural course wasn't easy for someone who had spent his entire career defying the odds, pushing boundaries, and refusing to accept limitations. He had spent so much time building a future for humanity that he had almost forgotten to build a future for himself, one where he could still contribute, live fully, and experience life's milestones. His body, the very vessel that carried him through all his achievements, was beginning to remind him that even the greatest minds and the most powerful people had limitations. In the midst of this uncertainty, Musk began to reflect on his family and the people closest to him. He thought about his children, his closest colleagues, and the people who depended on him. They, too, were affected by the passage of time. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about them. His physical health had a ripple effect on everything else in his life, the companies, the missions, the people who believed in him. If he wanted to continue to be there for them, to continue to lead and inspire, he needed to prioritize his health, both physically and emotionally. It wasn't just about preserving muscle mass, it was about preserving his ability to lead, to dream, and to continue working toward the future he envisioned. He wasn't just fighting to stay strong for himself, he was fighting to stay strong for the people who depended on him, for the projects that needed his vision, and for the legacy that was bigger than just one person. He realized that the essential foods for muscle strength after 60 weren't just about his physical well-being, they were a key part of a much bigger picture. They were a tool in his larger mission to live a longer, fuller life, one where he could continue to make an impact. The journey wasn't just about muscle health, it was about everything that came with it, the drive, the purpose, the people, and the legacy. As Musk reflected on this revelation, the emotional weight of his journey began to feel more purposeful. This wasn't just about avoiding aging or fighting against time. It was about making sure he had the strength to live his life to the fullest, to continue pushing humanity forward, and to leave behind a legacy that transcended his physical limitations. The road ahead wasn't easy, and the emotional challenges would only continue to grow as time passed. But Musk now understood that facing aging wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a necessary step in the journey of life. He needed to take care of himself in every way possible if he wanted to continue achieving the extraordinary feats that lay ahead. And so, with a renewed sense of purpose, Musk set his sights on the next stage of his journey, a journey not just of physical health, but of emotional strength and resilience. The essential foods for muscle strength were part of the equation, but they were only the beginning. It was now about a complete rethinking of how he would approach aging, success, and life itself. As Musk looked out over the SpaceX campus, the sun setting on another day of progress, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt within reach, because this time, he wasn't just trying to change the world. He was learning how to change himself, and that, he realized, was the most important mission of all. The sun had barely begun to rise, casting its golden rays over the sprawling SpaceX campus as Elon Musk sat alone in his office. His mind, once consumed by the insatiable pursuit of innovation, was now quieter. The discovery of the essential foods to maintain muscle strength after 60 had sparked a revelation far greater than any technological breakthrough or company expansion. It was about balance, finding the balance between work, health, and living a fulfilled life. The journey had taken him into uncharted waters, beyond rockets, artificial intelligence, and electric cars, into the realm of personal health. And, in many ways, it had been more difficult to navigate than any technical challenge he'd ever faced. He'd spent decades pushing boundaries, seeking the impossible, never thinking about the inevitable passing of time. But now, as he sat back in his chair, he understood that no matter how much he had achieved, nothing could outpace time itself. The foods he'd incorporated into his diet, fatty fish, eggs, and plant-based proteins, had helped him feel stronger, more energized, and ready to take on the challenges of each day. But the physical improvements were just one part of the equation. The real lesson Musk had learned over the past few months wasn't about defying aging or preserving muscle mass, it was about understanding the delicate balance of body and mind. He had once believed that his success was measured by his ability to overcome every obstacle through sheer force of will. But now, he saw that real success came not from conquering everything, but from understanding his own limitations, and working with them. And one of the most crucial limitations he had come to terms with was the natural aging process. Musk thought about his family, his children, his parents, and his closest colleagues. He had always prided himself on being a futurist, someone who could see the road ahead and understand how to build it. But he realized now that to truly lead and inspire, he had to take care of the present, of his own health, his relationships, and the moments that mattered most. The future wasn't something that could be realized if he didn't have the strength to see it through, and that strength depended on more than just mental fortitude. It depended on his body, his heart, and his ability to live a life of balance. The concept of balance was something Musk had neglected for years. In his drive to change the world, he had often overextended himself. Work came before sleep, stress was a constant companion, and health had always taken a back seat. But now, he knew that these weren't just sacrifices in the pursuit of success. They were unsustainable choices. As he looked back, he realized that while his mind and intellect had helped him scale some of the most ambitious ventures in human history, it was his body that had often been neglected. The quest for muscle health had forced him to confront the deeper truths of his life. It was no longer enough to focus on the big picture, he needed to focus on the small, everyday choices that made up that picture. Nutrition, rest, exercise, and mental well-being were all interconnected in a way he had never fully understood. It wasn't about finding shortcuts to longevity or quick fixes. It was about making conscious choices every day to live a balanced life, and to stay healthy in mind, body, and spirit. Musk had begun to see the value in self-care, not as a luxury, but as a necessity. Just as a company needed balance between innovation and execution, his life needed balance between ambition and well-being. The foods he had chosen to support his muscles were part of a larger philosophy of balance that encompassed every aspect of his life. Each meal was a choice, each moment of rest was a step toward recovery, and every workout was a commitment to maintaining strength, not just in his body, but in his life's work. The truth that he had uncovered in this journey wasn't just about muscles. It was about resilience, the ability to adapt, to change, and to continue pursuing goals without sacrificing one's health and well-being. Musk had spent years focused on the future of humanity, but now he realized that in order to have a future, he had to focus on his own. Reflecting on everything he had learned, Musk decided it was time to share his journey with others. He wasn't a doctor or a nutritionist, but his story had the potential to inspire. If a visionary like him, who had spent decades dedicating his life to technology and business, could learn the importance of balance, then surely others could as well. He began to outline a new project, not a rocket or a car, but a public initiative aimed at educating people on how to maintain their health as they aged, particularly when it came to preserving muscle strength and overall vitality. It wasn't just about spreading the word on specific foods. Musk wanted to change the way people thought about aging and health, especially in a world that seemed obsessed with productivity and achievement. The most valuable resource wasn't just money or time, it was health. Without health, all the success in the world meant little. Without health, all the innovations he had created would be hollow. As he began drafting ideas for this new project, Musk also took a step back to reflect on his own legacy. His legacy wasn't just about the companies he had built, or the missions he had launched into space, it was about the impact he had on people's lives. If he could inspire others to take control of their health, to focus on the balance of body and mind, then perhaps his greatest legacy would be one that lasted far beyond the technology he had created. Musk's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. It was one of his team members, holding a cup of coffee and a piece of paper. "Elon, we've just got word that the Mars colonization mission is on track." "It's a breakthrough moment," the team member said, excitement in his voice. Musk smiled, feeling a sense of pride that he had worked so hard to bring this vision to life. But as he looked out the window, he also knew that his work wasn't finished. This mission to Mars, this mission to the stars, it was important. But so was the mission to live a long, healthy life, to be there for his family, to be present for the milestones yet to come. He sipped his coffee slowly, feeling a sense of contentment. For the first time, Musk felt the weight of the journey ahead and the importance of balance. The road to Mars would take years. But the road to health, happiness, and a meaningful life was something he could shape every day. The future was no longer just about technology or exploration, it was about the choices Musk made now, about his health, and about living a life that was truly sustainable. The work ahead was daunting, but for the first time, Musk felt ready for it. Because it wasn't just about preserving muscle mass or launching rockets, it was about preserving his future. And with that realization, Musk made a commitment, to continue learning, to continue pushing forward, but most importantly, to live with intention, to live with balance, and to help others do the same. Because in the end, as he had come to understand, true success wasn't measured by what you accomplished, it was measured by how well you lived and how long you could keep going. And that, he realized, was the most important mission of all. Elon Musk sat quietly in his office at SpaceX, reflecting on the journey he had been on over the past several months. The shifts he had made to his lifestyle, his diet, and his approach to health were beginning to show results, physically, mentally, and emotionally. But it was the small, daily decisions that had led to the most profound changes. Each choice, whether it was taking time for a workout, eating the right foods, or simply allowing himself to rest, had compounded in a way that he never imagined. The mornings had become a sacred time for him. A ritual of sorts. After years of working tirelessly through long hours and late nights, Musk had come to realize that the key to longevity and productivity wasn't about sacrificing sleep or pushing his limits every single day. It was about balance. And so, as the sun began to rise, he would start his day with a light stretch, a glass of water, and a breakfast rich in the nutrients that had now become central to his routine. He had learned to prioritize foods that were high in protein, essential fats, and vitamins, foods that nourished his muscles and kept him feeling strong. Fatty fish like salmon, eggs, and plant-based proteins had become regular staples in his meals. But what he found even more surprising was the impact that these foods had on his mental clarity. It was as if nourishing his body had given him a new level of focus and energy, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. The changes in his diet weren't the only adjustments Musk had made. He had also begun to appreciate the power of rest. In his earlier years, he had prided himself on being able to function on very little sleep, often sacrificing rest for the sake of productivity. But now, he understood that recovery was just as important as the work itself. By allowing his body to recharge, he found that he was able to approach challenges with a clear mind, better decision-making abilities, and the energy to tackle whatever came his way. But there was something even deeper at play. Musk realized that by taking better care of his health, he was setting a new example, not just for himself, but for the people around him. His children, his colleagues, and even the teams at Tesla and SpaceX were watching how he navigated this next stage of his life. He had always been a visionary, but now, he wanted to inspire others not just through his technological innovations but through the way he lived. As the weeks went by, Musk felt a shift in his mindset. His desire to work endlessly had been replaced by a newfound appreciation for life outside of his companies. He had always been consumed by the future, by Mars, by the technology he was creating, but now, he understood the importance of living in the present. The small moments, spending time with his family, taking a walk, enjoying a meal, became more meaningful. These were the moments that truly mattered, and he no longer felt the need to rush through them in pursuit of the next big thing. Musk had come to realize that while his ambitions were still as grand as ever, they no longer defined him in the same way. His desire to make the world a better place, to push humanity forward, remained at the core of everything he did. But now, he understood that to achieve those goals, he had to be strong, healthy, and present. His mission had evolved, and so had he. But change wasn't always easy. There were still days when the old habits crept back in, days when the temptation to dive into work without a second thought was too strong to resist. On those days, Musk would remind himself of what he had learned, that success wasn't just about what you accomplished, it was about how you lived along the way. One day, while walking through the Tesla factory, Musk caught sight of one of his engineers, a young woman who had recently joined the company. She was working tirelessly, her eyes fixed on her screen, her body slumped forward in concentration. Musk noticed the strain in her posture, the fatigue in her eyes, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility. He had been there before, burning the candle at both ends, pushing himself and his team to their limits. But now, he saw the cost of that approach, not just in terms of physical health but in terms of the long-term impact on creativity, innovation, and morale. He walked over to her desk, gently tapping her on the shoulder. "Hey, take a break," he said. "Get some fresh air. You've earned it." She looked up, surprised, but smiled. "Thanks, Elon. I think you're right." As she left for her break, Musk stood there for a moment, reflecting on how far he had come. His approach to leadership had changed, too. It wasn't just about achieving success at all costs, it was about sustaining that success over the long run. And in order to do that, people needed to be healthy, both physically and mentally. He had learned this lesson the hard way, and now, he wanted to pass it on. Later that evening, as he sat down for dinner with his children, Musk found himself reflecting on what this journey had meant for him. He was still the same Elon Musk, the entrepreneur, the innovator, the dreamer, but something had shifted within him. He had learned to embrace balance, to find joy in the small moments, and to recognize that his well-being was just as important as his achievements. "How was your day?" his daughter asked, as she passed him the mashed potatoes. "It was good," he replied with a smile. "But you know, I've learned that sometimes the best way to work is to take a step back and take care of yourself." She looked at him, curious. "How do you mean?" "Well," Musk said, "when you take care of your health, you have more energy, more focus, and more clarity. You can give your best to everything you do. And that includes being there for the people you care about." His daughter nodded thoughtfully. "So, it's like when we take care of our plants. If we water them and give them sunlight, they grow strong." "Exactly," Musk said, feeling a sense of pride in how far he had come in understanding this simple, yet profound truth. It's all about growth, and not just in the work you do, but in how you live. That night, as he tucked his children into bed, Musk found himself at peace. The journey had been long, and there was still much more ahead of him, but for the first time in years, he felt that he was on the right path. A path that balanced ambition with self-care, work with rest, and innovation with the simple joy of living a full, healthy life. The power of small changes had transformed his life in ways he could never have predicted. And as he looked ahead to the future, he knew that these changes were just the beginning. The journey to health, balance, and success was a lifelong one. But now, Musk was more committed than ever to seeing it through. And in doing so, he hoped to inspire not just his companies, but the world. Because, ultimately, it wasn't just about changing the future of technology. It was about changing the future of how we live, how we care for ourselves, and how we find meaning in the small moments that make up this beautiful, unpredictable life. The days blurred together in the frantic rhythm of work, meetings, and new innovations. Despite the immense success of SpaceX's Mars mission, Elon Musk knew that the road ahead was still long. There were still challenges to overcome, technical hurdles to clear, and, most importantly, a vision to keep alive. But for the first time, Musk was approaching this monumental task with a newfound sense of clarity and balance. The idea of colonizing Mars had once been his singular obsession, an all-consuming goal that he believed could revolutionize humanity's future. It was a mission to ensure the survival of the human race, a dream that could only be achieved if he pushed the boundaries of space exploration. And yet, as Musk prepared for another meeting with his SpaceX team, he realized that the road to Mars wasn't only about rockets, technology, and overcoming the harsh environment of outer space. It was about sustainability, and not just in the cosmic sense, but in his own personal life, as well. As he sat in the boardroom, surrounded by engineers, scientists, and visionaries, Musk couldn't help but notice how different he felt compared to a few months ago. His body, once worn down from years of neglect, now felt stronger. His mind, once clouded by stress and exhaustion, was sharper. And his perspective, once narrowly focused on the future, now included the importance of health, balance, and well-being. One of the engineers spoke up, detailing the latest advancements in rocket technology. The team was optimistic that they would soon have a spacecraft capable of making the journey to Mars and sustaining human life on the red planet. Musk listened intently, but in the back of his mind, he couldn't help but think about the lessons he had learned over the past several months. It wasn't just about building the right spacecraft. It wasn't just about the engineering marvels SpaceX had created. It was about ensuring the people who would one day travel to Mars had the physical and mental stamina to survive the journey. And that began here, on Earth, with decisions made every single day. Are we doing enough to ensure our crew's health on the journey? Musk asked, breaking into the conversation. His voice was calm, yet purposeful. The room fell silent for a moment. His question was unexpected, but not unwelcome. Musk had always been known for pushing the envelope, for thinking beyond the immediate constraints of engineering, but now, his focus was more holistic. I mean, Musk continued, we're building the technology for a Mars mission, but what about the human side of it? The mental and physical resilience. If we want to be truly successful, we need to consider the long-term well-being of our astronauts. How will their bodies adapt to extended periods in space? How will they stay healthy, both physically and mentally, for months or even years at a time? One of the astronauts who had been involved in the early simulations spoke up. Elon, we've considered all of that. We're already researching how to maintain muscle mass and bone density in space. We've also been looking at ways to ensure mental health through virtual connections with loved ones and regular psychological check-ins. But you're right, this is going to be one of the most important challenges of the mission. Musk nodded, grateful for the insight. I think we can do more. If we can learn to prioritize health, both mental and physical, here on Earth, it'll be a model for the astronauts who go to Mars. And maybe, just maybe, it'll inspire the world to take better care of themselves, too. The room buzzed with agreement, and a new sense of purpose filled the air. Musk knew that the road to Mars wasn't just about technology, it was about humanity itself. And humanity's ability to survive and thrive would depend not only on rockets and advanced technology, but on the choices individuals made every single day. After the meeting, Musk returned to his office. He felt a sense of fulfillment, but also an undeniable weight. The pressure to lead humanity into space was immense, and there were still so many obstacles ahead. But he was no longer driven by the fear of failure or the need to prove himself. He was motivated by a deeper understanding. If he wanted to succeed in sending humans to Mars, he needed to ensure that he, and everyone involved, had the resilience to get there. Elon Musk's mind wandered back to his own journey, how his own health had once been a distant priority, neglected in the pursuit of bigger dreams. He thought about how far he had come since those dark days when he barely made time for sleep or exercise. He had come to understand that a truly successful future wasn't just about the grand mission, the big breakthrough, or the next innovation. It was about living a life that was sustainable, both for himself and for those around him. As he got up from his desk to walk around the office, he noticed his reflection in the glass window. He looked stronger. His posture was different. His face had a certain calmness to it that hadn't been there before. The relentless pursuit of success had always left him feeling drained. But now, he felt more grounded. Balanced. He thought about the astronauts who would one day embark on the Mars journey. They, too, would need to be grounded. To survive in the harsh environment of space, they would need to have their physical and mental health in check. They would need to make conscious decisions every day to prioritize their well-being, even in the most extreme conditions. And Musk knew that their ability to thrive on Mars depended on the lessons they learned on Earth. With a sense of purpose, Musk made a decision. He would use his platform, his resources, and his influence to further the conversation about health, balance, and well-being. It wasn't just about building rockets anymore, it was about building a healthier future for everyone, on Earth, in space, and beyond. Over the next few months, Musk initiated a new initiative within SpaceX and Tesla to promote health and wellness among his employees. He encouraged regular exercise, balanced nutrition, and stress management. He knew that to make the bold goals of Mars a reality, his teams needed to be at their best, physically and mentally. They needed to lead by example. But Musk didn't stop there. He began to share his own journey more openly, how he had changed his diet, prioritized rest, and learned to take care of himself. He spoke about the importance of small, consistent choices, and how these seemingly insignificant changes could have profound impacts over time. Soon, the message spread beyond his companies. Musk's philosophy on health, balance, and resilience resonated with people around the world. It was a message that went beyond the high-tech world of rockets and electric cars. It was a message about how to live a better life. How to embrace change, how to take control of your health, and how to build a future that was sustainable in every way. The road to Mars was still long, but with each step forward, Musk felt more certain that the future wasn't just about technology. It was about humanity's ability to adapt, to evolve, and to take care of itself, no matter where we were headed. In the end, Elon Musk knew that the most important mission he could undertake was not just one that reached the stars, but one that brought humanity back to its roots, the need for health, balance, and well-being. That was the foundation for everything he hoped to accomplish, and it was the key to building a better, more sustainable future for everyone. And so, with renewed purpose, Musk turned his attention back to the future. A future that, with the right balance of technology and self-care, was bright, promising, and full of endless possibilities. It was a bright morning in California, and the calm sea breeze was a welcome relief to the intensity of the last few weeks. Elon Musk had been busier than ever, but today felt different. His companies were thriving, the Mars project was advancing, and his health was better than it had been in years. The transformation he had undergone was not just personal, it was now beginning to ripple through the cultures of SpaceX, Tesla, and beyond. Musk's new approach to health and wellness was no longer just a private journey, it was becoming a movement, one that was inspiring the people around him, both within his companies and across the globe. Musk knew that his success had always been tied to his drive and determination. But he also realized that the drive for constant work, for working around the clock and ignoring personal health, was no longer sustainable. His realization had come at a cost, a toll on his physical health, his mental well-being, and his relationships. Yet, he had discovered a powerful truth, that success could be achieved without sacrificing health, and that a healthy, balanced life could provide the foundation for a longer, more sustainable career and impact. With this new perspective, Musk had made a conscious decision to share his story. It wasn't about giving advice or telling people what to do. It was about leading by example. His journey to better health was one he shared openly with his employees, his social media followers, and anyone who cared to listen. He spoke about the importance of small changes, of taking time for rest, and of making mindful decisions about nutrition, exercise, and mental well-being. His personal experience had convinced him that no one could truly reach their full potential without first taking care of their body and mind. The ripple effect was immediate and profound. At SpaceX, the shift began slowly. At first, there were small changes. Wellness programs introduced at headquarters, a stronger emphasis on work-life balance, and the availability of healthier food options in the company's cafeterias. The culture, long defined by the relentless pursuit of Mars, was starting to evolve. The company's leadership encouraged employees to take breaks, rest when needed, and treat their health as seriously as they treated their work. Musk also made a point to implement exercise as part of the work routine. It wasn't just about physical activity but about recognizing the deep connection between mind and body. Employees who had once felt the weight of burnout now found new energy through daily workouts or even yoga classes during lunch breaks. Musk knew that when people felt healthy, they performed better, made more creative decisions, and were less likely to experience burnout, a growing concern in today's high-pressure workplace environments. To many, this shift seemed unexpected. SpaceX had always been the place where innovation thrived through intensity and urgency. But now, with Musk's example of living a balanced life, it became clear, the more you nurtured your well-being, the better your work performance would be. It wasn't just about putting in hours, it was about putting in the right hours. A rested mind and a well-nourished body were more productive than those running on fumes. The changes also made their way to Tesla, a company renowned not just for its technological innovations, but for the energy and drive its employees brought to their work. But as Tesla grew and became more influential in the automotive industry, Musk recognized that pushing the boundaries of innovation came with a price. Tesla's employees were passionate, but many were also overwhelmed by the demands of their roles. Musk started to address this by focusing more on employee well-being. In addition to the wellness initiatives at SpaceX, Musk worked with his Tesla team to implement practices that would reduce stress and increase productivity. Flexibility was introduced, allowing employees to manage their time better. They were given more opportunities for physical activity during work hours, more walking meetings, bike rides around the campus, and opportunities to get outside for some fresh air. But Musk also emphasized the mental aspect of wellness. He started offering mental health resources to employees, recognizing that a strong company culture was built not only on hard work and innovation but on mental and emotional well-being. He introduced initiatives that allowed employees to take time off for self-care, even offering company-sponsored retreats for relaxation and rejuvenation. His shift in focus was not just about improving the work environment. It was about creating a company culture that thrived on a foundation of health, balance, and mental strength. Musk wanted Tesla to be a place where innovation was not just driven by ambition but by employees who were strong, grounded, and capable of handling the pressure of groundbreaking work. Outside of his companies, Musk's health transformation also began to inspire others. Social media platforms were abuzz with the hashtag #MuskHealthChallenge, where people shared their stories of adopting healthier habits, whether it was starting a daily workout routine, cutting down on junk food, or making time for rest and relaxation. His message resonated with people around the world who had long prioritized their careers over their health. Musk wasn't just influencing engineers and entrepreneurs, he was influencing people from all walks of life. A college student from New York posted about how she had started going to the gym after following Musk's journey. A father in Texas shared how he had finally begun cooking healthy meals for his family, inspired by Musk's commitment to clean, nutritious food. And even some of his critics acknowledged the power of the message. What started as a personal transformation for Musk had now become a global conversation. People were waking up to the fact that health wasn't something to be put on the back burner. Health wasn't just about preventing illness, it was about maximizing potential, longevity, and happiness. Musk had not only revolutionized the tech industry, but he was beginning to revolutionize the way people thought about success, self-care, and work-life balance. Despite the positive changes, the journey wasn't without its challenges. Musk's commitment to health often put him at odds with old habits, especially when it came to long hours and deadlines. There were times when the old Elon would resurface, pushing himself too hard or overcommitting to projects at the expense of his health. There were moments when Musk had to remind himself of the hard-won lessons he had learned over the past few months. It wasn't easy to break free from a lifetime of working around the clock. Even with all the success and positive feedback from his teams, there were days when Musk felt the pull of his former intensity, the drive to give more than his body could handle. But he had built a support system, friends, family, and even colleagues, who reminded him that health had to come first. They were his anchors, encouraging him to stay the course. And through those challenges, Musk realized the greatest lesson of all: progress was not about being perfect, but about being consistent. There would always be setbacks, but each small decision to take care of himself mattered. Musk's focus on health and wellness was no longer just about him. It was about creating a legacy, a new standard for how work, health, and innovation could coexist. His companies, SpaceX and Tesla, had made history by revolutionizing space travel and electric vehicles, but now, Musk was making history again. This time, by showing the world that taking care of yourself was just as revolutionary as building rockets. The world watched as he transformed not just the technology sector, but also the culture of work itself. He proved that balance and innovation were not mutually exclusive, they were, in fact, the keys to sustaining success. And as Elon Musk continued to push forward, with a clear mind, a healthy body, and a deep commitment to wellness, he knew this was only the beginning. His story was a testament to the power of small changes, and a message for generations to come: to reach the stars, you first need to take care of the body that will get you there. It was early morning again in the Tesla headquarters, and the sun was just beginning to peek over the distant hills. Elon Musk stood at the window of his office, looking out over the sprawling campus. The last few months had been transformative, not just for him, but for everyone around him. There was a sense of something bigger than just the innovations at SpaceX and Tesla. This was a personal revolution that was influencing not just his companies, but the way people thought about health, work, and success. It wasn't that Musk had suddenly become a wellness guru or health coach, no, he had simply lived out the changes in his own life and allowed them to shape the way he approached everything. It wasn't about perfection, it was about progress, consistency, and learning to balance the hustle of entrepreneurship with the essential need for self-care. People had taken notice, not just in Silicon Valley, but across the globe. Musk had become a symbol of the new age of mindful leadership, and his journey to better health and work-life balance was inspiring millions of people to rethink their own lives. The media, ever hungry for stories that would captivate the public, had been quick to latch on to Musk's transformation. Interviews with Musk were no longer just about SpaceX's latest rocket launch or Tesla's next electric car, they were about his daily routines, his diet, and the steps he had taken to optimize his physical and mental well-being. It wasn't long before Musk became the focal point of a global movement, one that was reshaping the way successful people viewed their lives. Musk had always been a leader in the traditional sense, charismatic, visionary, relentless. But now, he was leading in a new way, by showing vulnerability, by admitting that success couldn't come at the cost of your health. He began to speak publicly about the challenges of balancing the demands of running multiple groundbreaking companies with the need to take care of himself. "I used to think that success meant grinding away endlessly," that pushing yourself to the brink of exhaustion was the only path to greatness, Musk had said in a recent interview with the New York Times. But now I know that the greatest thing I can do for my companies, for my teams, and for myself, is to stay healthy. It's not just about work. It's about the people who are working with you. The people who believe in the mission. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of them. This message was groundbreaking in Silicon Valley. For years, the culture had been defined by the idea that relentless work, often to the point of burnout, was a badge of honor. Long hours, skipped meals, and sleepless nights were seen as symbols of dedication. But Musk's story was challenging that narrative. His message wasn't just about him, his wellness revolution was about every entrepreneur, every employee, every individual who had ever felt pressure to sacrifice their well-being for success. For many, Musk had always seemed larger than life, an almost mythic figure whose success was propelled by an insatiable drive and a never-ending work ethic. But now, he was sharing the side of himself that people rarely saw. The part that struggled. The part that learned. The part that grew. I used to think taking a day off was a waste, Musk explained to an interviewer during one of his first public talks on health and productivity. Now, I see it differently. A rested mind and body are the keys to creative thinking and sustainable progress. Sometimes, doing less is actually the most productive thing you can do. This shift was not just theoretical. It was having real-world effects on the culture at SpaceX and Tesla. Teams at both companies were experiencing fewer instances of burnout, and productivity was at an all-time high. While the work was still intense, Musk's leadership style had begun to emphasize balance in a way that hadn't been there before. People were encouraged to take breaks, manage their stress, and even pursue passions outside of work. The intense workaholism that had defined the culture of both companies was starting to give way to a more balanced, sustainable way of achieving extraordinary results. SpaceX engineers, once notorious for working 12-hour days and weekends, were now encouraged to take time for personal projects and self-care. There were weekly wellness workshops that included everything from stretching exercises to nutrition classes to mental health seminars. The message was clear: taking care of your body and mind wasn't just good for you, it was good for the company. And the results were tangible. The energy in the office was different. People were more focused, more creative, and more motivated to show up for each other. Tesla's culture, known for its intense pace and rapid innovation, was also shifting. Employees were finding new ways to work smarter, not harder. The constant pressure to keep the company on the cutting edge of electric vehicle technology hadn't disappeared, but there was a newfound emphasis on collaboration and work-life balance. Musk's transformation had served as a powerful reminder that true innovation didn't require people to sacrifice themselves to the grind, it required them to work in a way that respected their well-being. It wasn't long before other tech CEOs and leaders began to follow suit. Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, praised Musk's focus on mental health during a tech conference, stating, "I think Elon is onto something here. We've always focused on productivity, but it's time we started focusing on the people behind the work." Other high-profile leaders began to speak out about the importance of mental and physical health in the workplace, and companies across the globe began to take steps toward integrating wellness initiatives into their corporate cultures. Even outside the tech industry, Musk's message was having an impact. Corporations, small businesses, and startups were adopting wellness programs, offering employees gym memberships, mental health days, and flexible schedules. The world was starting to wake up to the idea that wellness wasn't just an individual pursuit, it was a collective responsibility that could elevate companies and entire industries. Musk's transformation wasn't just about his physical health, it was about the future of success. The face of leadership was changing, and Musk had played a pivotal role in that change. As the world grappled with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, with work-life balance becoming a priority for millions of people, Musk's message resonated more than ever. No longer was success measured solely by the ability to outwork everyone else. The new measure of success was the ability to innovate sustainably, to maintain balance, and to thrive without compromising one's physical and mental well-being. Musk's influence on the global narrative of success wasn't confined to the world of business. Ordinary people, students, parents, athletes, artists, were beginning to apply the principles Musk had espoused in their own lives. He had shown the world that it was possible to aim high, to be ambitious, and to change the world, without sacrificing health, happiness, or fulfillment. As Elon Musk looked out over the campus, a sense of satisfaction filled him. The journey he had embarked on was far from over, but it was already having an impact beyond anything he had imagined. He wasn't just working toward the colonization of Mars anymore. He was working toward a future where human beings thrived, not just on other planets, but here on Earth. The changes he had made in his life had reverberated far beyond the walls of SpaceX and Tesla. They had sparked a conversation about health, work, and success that was spreading across the globe. And as Musk thought about the future, he knew that this was just the beginning. There was more to be done, more lives to be impacted, and more people to inspire. The message was clear: success didn't have to come at the cost of health. In fact, health was the foundation of success. And with that in mind, Elon Musk was ready for whatever came next, not just as a leader in business, but as a leader in life. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Despite the overwhelming success and the positive ripple effect of Musk's newfound approach to health and wellness, the journey was not without its challenges. Change, especially on the scale Musk was advocating, never came without resistance. There were days when the old patterns crept back in, where the allure of long workdays and the familiar grind of overcommitment seemed more enticing than the path to balance. Musk had always been a driven person, and while his physical transformation was undeniable, the mental shift required was far more difficult. The pressure to keep innovating, to maintain the success of SpaceX, Tesla, and his other ventures, was immense. And as much as he had preached about the importance of mental health, there were days when he found himself questioning whether he was doing enough or if his renewed focus on wellness might be slowing down progress. He would often catch himself working long hours, staying up late at his desk, answering emails, and brainstorming new projects, old habits that were hard to break. It was during these times that he had to remind himself why he was on this journey in the first place. One particularly challenging week, the stresses of running multiple companies started to take their toll. Musk had just returned from an overseas trip to secure more funding for SpaceX's Mars mission, and the trip had left him exhausted. He didn't feel like working out. He skipped his usual healthy meals and found himself reaching for unhealthy snacks to get him through the day. As the days passed, the fatigue mounted, and so did the frustration. It was during one of these low moments that he had a conversation with Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX's president and COO, who had been closely following Musk's health journey. "Elon," she said with a serious tone, "I know you want to change the world. We all do. But you can't pour from an empty cup. You've said it before. You've been leading the charge on innovation, but right now, you're leading yourself into burnout." Musk knew she was right. The old Elon would have powered through, ignoring his body's signs of fatigue, but this time, he couldn't afford to ignore them. He took a step back and re-evaluated the situation, and that's when he realized that true leadership wasn't just about being there for others. It was about being able to lead by example and showing people the importance of taking care of oneself in order to continue leading the charge in other areas. The week that followed was a turning point. Musk decided to take a break from his usual routine and put himself through a reset phase, a concept he had learned from his own wellness journey. He spent a few days focused solely on recovery, sleeping in, meditating, and spending quality time with his family. He refrained from checking his emails and working on any projects. Instead, he took long walks outside, embraced the fresh air, and allowed his body to recover. During this reset, Musk also revisited the 3 essential foods that had been a cornerstone of his health journey: salmon, leafy greens, and nuts. He went back to these foods with a sense of gratitude, understanding that these simple yet powerful ingredients had played a significant role in his newfound energy and vitality. For the first time in a long time, Musk wasn't thinking about the next big thing or the next challenge. He was thinking about himself, and in doing so, he realized something profound. His health had always been the foundation of his success, even if he had overlooked it for years. After taking this much-needed break, Musk returned to his routine with renewed energy and a clearer perspective. The lesson was clear: in order to continue innovating and pushing the boundaries of what was possible, he had to remain healthy, physically and mentally. The breakthrough wasn't just in technology or business, it was in his own approach to life. Musk's return to balance had a significant effect on his teams. They could see the difference in him. He was more present, more patient, and more focused. His leadership had always been intense, but now there was a newfound calmness and clarity in his decision-making. SpaceX employees began to mirror this change, applying the same philosophy to their work and daily lives. Tesla's teams followed suit, with more employees embracing wellness routines and supporting one another in ways they hadn't before. There was a shift in the leadership culture across Musk's companies. Instead of leading through constant urgency and unrelenting pressure, Musk began to lead through intentionality, balance, and sustainable growth. He encouraged his team to be more in tune with their own well-being, understanding that personal health was a key driver of professional success. As Musk openly discussed the importance of mental health in the workplace, other leaders in the tech industry began to follow suit. It wasn't just about creating innovative products anymore, it was about creating environments where people could thrive, both as professionals and as individuals. Musk's message was starting to change the conversation on leadership in business, encouraging a new generation of leaders to prioritize health and wellness as part of their success. Musk's influence was undeniable. As the world watched his personal transformation, they saw the power of small, consistent changes. His journey had ignited a larger conversation about the intersection of health and productivity, challenging the idea that work and well-being were mutually exclusive. Around the world, companies were following Musk's example by incorporating wellness programs, mindfulness practices, and mental health resources into their workplaces. From tech startups to major corporations, there was a growing recognition that supporting employee wellness wasn't just a nice-to-have, it was a necessity for long-term success. In public talks, Musk continued to speak about the importance of balance, urging other entrepreneurs and leaders to rethink the ways they approached their own work and health. He emphasized that there were no shortcuts to true success. Sustainable growth required taking care of yourself first. As he traveled around the world, speaking at conferences and sharing his message, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. People from all walks of life, executives, parents, young professionals, students, were inspired by Musk's story. They saw that it wasn't about being perfect, it was about making continuous, deliberate efforts toward health and balance. Elon Musk was no longer just a tech billionaire or a visionary entrepreneur. He had become a symbol of the modern, mindful leader. Someone who understood that to achieve greatness, one had to maintain balance. His health journey wasn't just personal, it was universal. It was about the interconnectedness of mind, body, and work, and how all three had to be nurtured in order to achieve true success. As Musk moved forward, he knew that his journey wasn't over. He had learned valuable lessons about the importance of self-care and the power of resilience, and he was committed to continuing the work of building a world where innovation and well-being went hand in hand. But for now, he was content in knowing that his story had already sparked something much bigger. The wellness movement was no longer just a trend, it was becoming a way of life, and Musk had helped lead the charge. The ripple effect that had started with a simple shift in his own habits had become a global revolution, one that was changing the way people thought about success, leadership, and, ultimately, life. As Musk stood once again on the balcony of his office, looking out at the world he was helping to shape, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had overcome the setbacks, learned from them, and emerged stronger than ever. The journey wasn't always easy, but it had been worth it. And as he gazed toward the horizon, he knew that the best was yet to come. As Musk's transformation gained momentum, something more profound began to emerge in his approach to life, an understanding that innovation wasn't just about pushing harder, working longer, or saying yes to every opportunity that came his way. It was about knowing when to step back, reflect, and say no. This was a lesson he was still learning, even after the strides he had made. For years, Musk had been famous for his relentless drive, taking on every challenge with a never say die attitude. But as his wellness journey evolved, he began to realize that this same drive had once been his greatest strength and, paradoxically, his greatest weakness. His tendency to say yes to every project, every meeting, every idea had left him stretched too thin, constantly operating on fumes. He had learned the hard way that in order to be at his best, he had to give himself permission to step back and prioritize. The first major test of this new mindset came when a high-profile opportunity to launch a new venture presented itself, a groundbreaking idea in the realm of artificial intelligence. The project had the potential to transform entire industries, and the world was eager to see what Musk would do next. It was the kind of opportunity that, under normal circumstances, Musk would have jumped at immediately. But this time, something was different. Musk found himself sitting at his desk, staring at the proposal, feeling an overwhelming sense of fatigue. His mind was racing. Not with excitement, but with uncertainty. He had already been stretched thin with his responsibilities at Tesla, SpaceX, and his other ventures. The prospect of diving into something as demanding as AI seemed overwhelming, and the pressure to take it on was immense. After days of contemplation, Musk made a bold decision. He turned the offer down. For the first time in years, he consciously chose to say no. It wasn't an easy decision. The pressure to seize every opportunity, to be the one leading every revolution, was still there. But Musk knew that the cost of taking on yet another major venture would not only affect his health, it would also dilute his ability to lead the projects he already had. He had learned that saying no wasn't about rejecting opportunities, it was about preserving his energy, focus, and clarity for the things that truly mattered. Musk's decision to say no had a profound effect on his daily routine. It was as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. With fewer projects demanding his attention, he found himself with more time to focus on his personal health and well-being. He began to deepen his commitment to physical fitness, taking time each day to work out and eat nourishing meals. His meditation sessions became longer, and he started to embrace more mindfulness practices in his daily routine. At the same time, Musk began to refocus on his relationships. For years, his family and friends had taken a back seat to his career. He had neglected the people who mattered most in his life, consumed by the demands of his companies and his public persona. But now, he made a conscious effort to reconnect with those he loved. He started to spend more quality time with his children, taking them to the park, playing video games, and enjoying simple, everyday moments. He also re-established bonds with close friends, spending time with them in ways he hadn't been able to for years. Musk understood that these relationships were the foundation of his support system, and without them, no amount of success would bring him true fulfillment. Musk's decision to embrace a more balanced approach didn't go unnoticed within his companies. SpaceX and Tesla employees began to see the benefits of a healthier, more present Musk. His decision to say no had not only protected his own well-being, it had also allowed him to show up more fully for his teams. Gwynne Shotwell, the COO of SpaceX, noticed a change in the way Musk interacted with the teams. He was more patient, more thoughtful in his decision-making, and more attuned to the needs of those around him. She could see the shift in his leadership style. He was no longer just a figurehead, pushing the team forward with urgency. He had become a true leader, one who understood the importance of balance and self-care. Tesla employees also began to adopt this new mindset. Musk's openness about his struggles with burnout and his commitment to self-care inspired a shift in the culture. There was less emphasis on working around the clock and more on achieving quality results while maintaining a sustainable pace. Teams began to work smarter, not harder, and it was reflected in the innovation coming out of the company. Productivity was higher, and employee satisfaction reached new heights. Musk's message was clear: success didn't require sacrificing health or happiness. By focusing on well-being, employees were empowered to bring their best selves to work, leading to greater innovation and better outcomes for everyone involved. One of the most unexpected lessons Musk learned during this phase of his journey was the power of gratitude. As he slowed down and took time to reflect, he found himself feeling an overwhelming sense of appreciation for the life he had built. For years, he had been so focused on achieving the next big thing that he hadn't fully appreciated the journey he had taken. He began to express his gratitude more openly, whether through personal messages to his employees or public acknowledgments of those who had supported him along the way. Musk had always been a man of few words when it came to showing emotion, but now, he was learning to be more vulnerable and appreciative of the people around him. In one of his most public displays of gratitude, Musk spoke at an employee event at SpaceX, thanking the entire team for their tireless work and dedication. He recognized the contributions of everyone, from the engineers to the administrative staff, and acknowledged how each person played a role in SpaceX's success. It was a moment of true humility, and it resonated deeply with his team. "I've been so focused on the next challenge, the next frontier, that I've forgotten to appreciate the people who are with me in this journey," Musk admitted to the crowd. "It's not just about the rockets we launch or the cars we build. It's about the people who make it all possible. You all are the real force behind everything we do." This expression of gratitude had a lasting impact on Musk's teams. It created a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose that had been missing in the past. People felt seen and valued, not just as employees, but as integral parts of a larger mission. And in return, they gave more of themselves to the work they were doing. Musk's journey had led him to a profound realization: leadership wasn't just about directing others, it was about leading by example. By embracing balance, saying no when necessary, and prioritizing his health and relationships, he was showing his teams that they didn't have to choose between success and well-being. They could have both, but only if they were willing to make intentional choices and set boundaries. Musk's influence had extended beyond the walls of his companies. As more and more leaders adopted similar practices, the broader business world began to see the value of balanced leadership. Companies that once championed the "work harder, faster" mentality were now adopting policies that supported employee wellness. Wellness programs were becoming the norm, and mental health was being given the attention it deserved. Musk had become a beacon for a new kind of leadership, one that embraced vulnerability, prioritized health, and understood the importance of personal well-being in the pursuit of professional success. As Musk continued his journey, he knew that there would be challenges ahead, but he was no longer afraid. He had found the balance that had eluded him for so long. And with that balance, he was ready to face whatever the future had in store, both as an innovator and as a person. The lesson was clear: true success was not about doing more, it was about doing the right things, with intention, balance, and gratitude. With his new approach to leadership and wellness firmly in place, Musk was at a crossroads. The changes he had embraced in his personal life had not only made him healthier, but they had also given him a renewed sense of purpose. However, there was still one major challenge left: he had to face the deeply ingrained culture of relentless work that defined much of his companies. How could he balance the demands of his global empire while maintaining the harmony he had recently achieved in his own life? Musk realized that true change had to extend beyond himself. It had to permeate through the very fabric of the organizations he had built. For years, his companies, especially Tesla and SpaceX, had been known for their intense work environments, where employees worked long hours and often sacrificed personal time to meet the demands of their groundbreaking projects. The results were undeniable: SpaceX's successful launches, Tesla's electric cars, and the development of new technologies that seemed to redefine the future, but the toll it took on Musk and his teams was equally evident. Musk had seen firsthand the consequences of pushing people beyond their limits. He had witnessed burnout, high turnover rates, and a lack of work-life balance in the pursuit of perfection. But he had also experienced the rewards, the exhilaration of achieving the impossible, the sense of accomplishment when a project came to fruition, and the unwavering commitment of his teams. Yet, he knew something had to give. The old ways had served their purpose, but they could no longer be the blueprint for the future. If his companies were to continue thriving without sacrificing their people, they needed to evolve. Musk's first step was to introduce a new way of thinking within his companies. He called it the power of persistence, a philosophy that embraced sustained effort but also acknowledged the importance of rest, recovery, and a balanced approach to innovation. It wasn't about working harder, it was about working smarter, with a focus on long-term results rather than short-term achievements. He began by restructuring the way teams approached projects. In the past, it had been common for employees to work long hours under intense pressure, sometimes to the detriment of their mental health. But Musk now made it clear that it was okay to take a step back and reset. He introduced mandatory wellness breaks, scheduled mindfulness sessions, and even introduced flexible hours for employees to accommodate their personal lives. At first, the reaction was mixed. Some employees were skeptical. After all, they had grown accustomed to the high-pressure environment, where working late into the night and over the weekend was a badge of honor. But Musk had learned firsthand how unsustainable this approach could be, and he was determined to show them a different path. Slowly but surely, the culture began to shift. People started to see that productivity wasn't necessarily linked to the number of hours worked. In fact, many employees reported feeling more energized and focused after taking regular breaks or engaging in wellness activities. Innovation flourished, not in a sprint but in a steady marathon, where ideas were nurtured over time, and team collaboration took precedence over individual sacrifice. Musk also encouraged open conversations about mental health, which had always been a taboo topic in the tech world. He created safe spaces for employees to share their struggles, both personal and professional, without fear of judgment. This openness fostered a sense of camaraderie and understanding, and it made the company a more compassionate and supportive place to work. Musk's commitment to this new work culture wasn't just theoretical. He led by example, continuously demonstrating his dedication to balance and well-being. He made time for daily exercise, maintained his healthy eating habits, and took regular breaks to recharge. He also became more present in the lives of his employees, taking time to engage with them outside of formal meetings and projects. In one particularly memorable instance, Musk hosted an all-hands meeting at SpaceX where he spoke openly about the importance of personal well-being and the role it played in the company's success. He shared his own journey, his struggles with burnout, his decision to prioritize health, and the positive impact it had on his work. "Look, we're changing the world here," Musk told his employees, "but we can't do that if we're running on empty. The key to long-term success isn't just in the products we make, it's in the people who make them. You matter. Your health matters." His words resonated deeply with the SpaceX team. Musk had always been a figure of intensity and ambition, but hearing him speak with such vulnerability and authenticity made a lasting impact. Employees began to internalize the message. They were not just cogs in a machine, they were valued individuals with unique needs and talents. As SpaceX and Tesla embraced this new approach, the results were nothing short of remarkable. Projects continued to move forward, but the pace had shifted. The focus was no longer on meeting immediate deadlines at the cost of personal health, it was on building sustainable, high-quality results that would stand the test of time. Employee retention rates improved, and productivity increased. More importantly, the overall morale within the companies was higher than ever before. Musk had succeeded in building a culture that valued both innovation and well-being. And as a result, SpaceX launched its most successful Mars mission yet, and Tesla saw record-breaking sales of its electric vehicles. Musk's personal transformation had become a catalyst for organizational change. The companies he had founded and nurtured were now operating under a new set of principles, one that prioritized balance, health, and long-term sustainability. And the world took notice. The impact of Musk's philosophy began to ripple across the tech industry. Other leaders in Silicon Valley and beyond began to look at their own work cultures, questioning whether the constant hustle and grind were truly sustainable. The idea of achieving success without sacrificing personal well-being gained traction, and companies worldwide began adopting similar wellness initiatives. As more companies implemented wellness-focused initiatives, the entire industry began to shift. Workplaces began to embrace flexible hours, mental health days, and wellness programs. The stigma surrounding taking breaks or focusing on self-care slowly faded away. In its place was a new culture, one that valued mental and physical health just as much as it valued innovation and productivity. The media took notice, with articles and interviews praising Musk for his role in driving this cultural shift. Musk had always been a polarizing figure, often seen as a visionary who pushed boundaries. But now, he was also being recognized for his role in leading a movement that challenged the traditional norms of the tech industry. Elon Musk is more than just a tech mogul, one article read. He's the architect of a new way of thinking about work, health, and success, a philosophy that could redefine how we approach productivity and innovation for years to come. For Musk, this recognition wasn't about accolades or praise. It was about the impact he had on the people he worked with and the world he was helping to create. He had learned that the key to success wasn't about working harder, it was about working smarter, with balance and purpose. As the years went by, Musk's legacy became clear. He had revolutionized industries, from space exploration to electric vehicles, but his most lasting impact might be the shift he had instigated in how we approach work and well-being. His story was one of persistence, not just in achieving the impossible but in finding balance and sustainability in the pursuit of greatness. The world had changed in ways Musk had never anticipated. As his companies thrived and continued to push the boundaries of innovation, they did so with a newfound sense of purpose and a commitment to the health and well-being of those who made it all possible. And in doing so, they had set a new standard for what it meant to lead, not just with vision, but with heart. As Musk looked back on his journey, he knew that the most important thing he had learned was that innovation, success, and well-being were not mutually exclusive. In fact, they were interdependent. By taking care of himself and his people, he had unlocked the true potential of what was possible. And with that realization, Musk stood once more at the helm of his companies, ready to continue leading them into the future, with balance, purpose, and the unwavering belief that the best was yet to come. Musk's transformation from a high-pressure visionary to a balanced, purpose-driven leader was making waves, not just within his companies but across industries worldwide. As the pace of his personal and professional evolution accelerated, Musk began to recognize a deeper connection between his health, his leadership, and his ultimate mission. The innovation he had long been known for, whether it was in electric vehicles, rockets, or artificial intelligence, wasn't just about technology. It was about using technology to improve lives, to ensure that humanity could thrive on Earth and beyond. For the first time, Musk began to see his role not just as an entrepreneur, but as a steward of human progress. His work was no longer driven by an insatiable desire to outdo his competitors or to prove himself to the world. Instead, it was fueled by a desire to create a future where people could live healthier, more fulfilling lives. Where the systems he was building would support a sustainable future for generations to come. Musk's newfound sense of balance had brought him clarity. As he continued to meditate on his larger purpose, he came to a profound realization: his companies were more than just technological titans. They were platforms for creating lasting change, not just in how the world operated, but in how people thought about progress itself. Musk had always been a pioneer, pushing boundaries in the fields of space exploration, electric vehicles, and renewable energy. But now, he began to see these industries through a more human-centered lens. Space exploration wasn't just about reaching Mars or colonizing other planets, it was about ensuring humanity's survival and expanding our horizons. Electric vehicles weren't just a response to climate change, they were part of a larger movement to reduce human dependence on fossil fuels and mitigate the environmental damage caused by industrialization. In his work at SpaceX, Musk had always believed that space exploration was vital for the future of humanity. But now, he saw it as a critical part of his personal mission, to inspire people to think beyond the confines of Earth and to unite in the pursuit of a sustainable, multiplanetary future. His focus on reducing the cost of space travel, making Mars colonization a reality, and developing new technologies wasn't just about space, it was about creating a mindset shift. He wanted humanity to believe that anything was possible and to create a future where technology worked for people, not against them. At Tesla, Musk saw the same opportunity. The electric vehicles Tesla produced were a step in the right direction, but the larger vision of a sustainable world encompassed much more. Tesla wasn't just building cars, it was reshaping the very fabric of how people interacted with energy. Through solar technology, energy storage solutions, and electric vehicles, Tesla was paving the way for a world where humans could live in harmony with the planet, rather than exploit it for resources. But beyond all of this, Musk recognized the untapped potential to leverage his companies to influence a shift in human consciousness, a paradigm shift in how people viewed progress and technology. If he could lead by example, showing that balance, well-being, and innovation could coexist, perhaps others would follow. His mission, he realized, was as much about nurturing the human spirit as it was about revolutionizing technology. Musk's idea of leadership had evolved significantly. In the past, he was often driven by an almost singular focus on technological breakthroughs. Success was defined by how much he could push the envelope and make a seemingly impossible idea into reality. But now, he had an entirely new definition of success. One that wasn't just about achievement, but about the way people lived while achieving it. It was about sustainability, not just for the planet, but for individuals, communities, and the workforce that supported the endeavors. Sustainability, Musk realized, wasn't a buzzword. It was a lifestyle, and it had to be integrated into every part of his companies. From how they sourced materials to how they treated their employees, sustainability needed to be more than just a goal, it had to become a way of thinking. And in this pursuit, Musk saw an opportunity to push even further. He began to emphasize sustainable practices across every aspect of his operations, from Tesla's battery production to SpaceX's carbon-neutral rocket launches. At Tesla, he rolled out new initiatives to reduce the environmental impact of their manufacturing processes, focusing on using recycled materials and lowering energy consumption. At SpaceX, he sought to make rocket launches as environmentally friendly as possible, exploring alternative fuels and reusability as a way to cut down on waste. This commitment to sustainability was reflected in the culture of his companies as well. Musk's leadership approach, rooted in mindfulness, wellness, and balance, extended to how his employees were encouraged to view their roles in the company. They were not just cogs in a machine, they were integral to a mission that transcended the pursuit of profit. By aligning their work with a larger sense of purpose, Musk hoped to inspire the next generation of innovators to approach their careers with a similar sense of responsibility, knowing that technology could serve the greater good. Musk's influence reached beyond the boundaries of his companies. As he continued to refine his philosophy of leadership, he realized that the true potential of his work could only be realized by inspiring other leaders to follow suit. He began to speak more openly about his vision for the future, not just in terms of technological advancements, but in the context of global challenges. At a global innovation summit, Musk gave one of his most profound speeches to date. He spoke not just about Mars, Tesla, or renewable energy, but about the interconnectedness of all the work he was doing. He talked about the future of work, the need for a healthier, more sustainable planet, and the importance of developing technologies that served humanity in the long term. He stressed that the pursuit of progress must always consider the well-being of individuals, communities, and ecosystems. We cannot innovate in isolation, Musk said during the summit. The work we do must contribute to the betterment of humanity, and that means thinking holistically about the impact our work has on the world. Every breakthrough we make should not only be about the technology itself but about how it improves the lives of everyone on this planet, and eventually, beyond. Musk's words resonated with the audience. The room, filled with leaders from industries across the globe, seemed to pause and reflect on the broader implications of their work. It was a pivotal moment, one that underscored Musk's belief that true leadership wasn't just about profit or success, it was about creating positive change. His influence wasn't confined to Silicon Valley or his own ventures, it had begun to stretch its wings across industries, inspiring CEOs, innovators, and entrepreneurs to reconsider how they measured success. As Musk's journey continued, he became more than just a visionary businessman. He became a symbol of a new kind of leadership, one that was grounded in mindfulness, sustainability, and human-centered innovation. His story, from the chaotic pursuit of success to the quiet realization that balance was the key to unlocking true potential, was inspiring others to reevaluate what it meant to lead. Musk's legacy, as he had envisioned it, wasn't about building the most powerful companies in the world. It was about creating a future where technology could coexist with the health and happiness of the people who used it. It was about creating systems that worked for everyone, not just for those at the top of the corporate ladder. And in doing so, Musk had redefined what it meant to be an innovator. His vision, once solely focused on achieving the impossible, now embraced the idea that true innovation was rooted in creating a better, more sustainable future. With his balance of ambition and mindfulness, Musk had crafted a blueprint for leadership that would inspire generations of leaders to come. As he stood at the helm of his companies, ready to push the boundaries of what was possible, Musk knew that his journey was far from over. But now, he approached it with a deeper sense of purpose, one that would guide him and his companies toward a future that was not just groundbreaking, but also humane, balanced, and sustainable. The world was watching, and Musk was ready to lead it into a new era. By now, Elon Musk had achieved what many thought was impossible. His companies, SpaceX, Tesla, and others, were not just financial powerhouses, but cultural symbols of what it meant to push the limits of human potential. Yet, as Musk continued to evolve as a leader, he found himself facing an entirely new set of challenges. The weight of global expectations had never been heavier. As his companies expanded and new industries embraced his innovations, Musk's role had evolved from a visionary engineer to a global icon, one whose actions and philosophies had the power to shape entire sectors. With that power came a responsibility, to lead in a way that was both groundbreaking and responsible. Musk, for the first time in his career, began to recognize the necessity of aligning his innovations with the well-being of individuals, society, and the planet. In this phase of his career, Musk found himself at the crossroads of vision and responsibility. It was clear that his relentless drive to revolutionize industries needed to be balanced with a greater consideration for the long-term impacts of his work. He had already disrupted the automotive, aerospace, and energy industries, but now he began to look at a broader picture: what kind of future did he want to leave for humanity, and how could his work contribute to that? Musk had always believed that the future of humanity lay beyond Earth. Colonizing Mars had been a dream for decades, and through SpaceX, he was bringing that vision closer to reality. Yet, as his companies continued to make strides in space exploration, Musk began to think more deeply about humanity's long-term survival. "I've always said that the reason we need to make life multiplanetary is for the survival of humanity," Musk reflected during a rare interview. "If we only exist on one planet, we're vulnerable to any number of catastrophic events, be it natural disasters, climate change, or something unforeseen. But if we spread ourselves across different planets, we can increase our chances of survival." It wasn't just about sending humans to Mars for the sake of exploration, it was about creating a new kind of civilization, one that could thrive independently of Earth's fragile ecosystem. But as Musk pondered the logistics of a Mars colony, he realized that he wasn't just building rockets and spaceships. He was building the framework for a new kind of society, one that would be sustainable and adaptable. As SpaceX continued to push the boundaries of space exploration, Musk began integrating more sustainable practices into his vision. He focused on designing spacecraft that could be reused multiple times, minimizing waste and reducing the cost of space travel. The goal was to make space travel more affordable, not just for the privileged few, but for everyone. In doing so, Musk hoped to democratize access to space and, ultimately, give humanity a backup plan for its future. This shift in his thinking wasn't just about space, it was about creating a new philosophy of innovation. It was no longer enough to simply innovate for the sake of profit or for the thrill of the challenge. Musk's innovations needed to align with the long-term health and prosperity of humanity. And in this new way of thinking, sustainability became as important as scientific achievement. As Musk delved deeper into his work, he realized that true progress would not be defined solely by technological advancement. It would also be defined by how those technologies could improve the quality of life for individuals across the globe. He had already seen how a focus on well-being had changed his own life. Now, he wanted to share that understanding with others. One of Musk's most groundbreaking projects in this new phase of his career was the integration of wellness into the design of Tesla's electric vehicles. No longer just an environmentally friendly car company, Tesla became a leader in rethinking how technology could serve human well-being in the most direct way. Musk's team began developing cars that not only reduced emissions but also optimized the driver's experience. Tesla's vehicles were outfitted with advanced air filtration systems, ensuring that passengers were breathing clean air no matter where they went. The vehicles also featured personalized climate control settings that could be adjusted to an individual's preferences, promoting a more comfortable, enjoyable driving experience. Musk's vision for Tesla was no longer just about creating sleek, eco-friendly cars, it was about crafting a holistic experience that supported the health and well-being of those who used them. He envisioned a world where technology wasn't something that alienated or exhausted people, but something that enhanced their lives and allowed them to thrive. Beyond electric vehicles, Musk's companies began incorporating wellness-focused initiatives into all aspects of their operations. From energy-efficient buildings to sustainable farming practices, the goal was to integrate well-being into every facet of his business model. Even the work culture at Tesla and SpaceX continued to evolve, with more focus on employee wellness, mental health support, and work-life balance. Musk's personal evolution and commitment to well-being began to influence more than just his own companies. As his approach to leadership continued to gain attention, other innovators and business leaders began to take notice. Musk's vision was becoming a template for how to lead with purpose and integrity, and the ripple effect was palpable. Elon Musk has always been a symbol of relentless ambition, but what's truly inspiring is his shift toward a more mindful, sustainable approach to leadership, said Arianna Huffington, founder of Thrive Global and a leader in the wellness movement. He's showing us that it's possible to drive innovation and growth while also considering the broader impact on humanity. His evolution as a leader is a blueprint for the future. Musk's focus on wellness and sustainability began to spark a global conversation about the intersection of business and social responsibility. More and more leaders in Silicon Valley and beyond began to prioritize not only profitability but also the well-being of their employees and customers. Businesses began integrating sustainability initiatives, wellness programs, and mindfulness practices into their corporate structures. The result was a paradigm shift in how companies approached their work and their impact on the world. No longer was it enough to simply achieve success, businesses were now expected to contribute to the broader social good. Musk's leadership had demonstrated that it was possible to innovate, create, and profit while still caring for the planet and its people. As Musk continued to expand his vision, he recognized that the future of innovation would be shaped by two core principles: sustainability and humanity. Whether it was through reducing the carbon footprint of his electric vehicles, enabling space exploration, or creating products that improved the daily lives of individuals, Musk's work had become a testament to the idea that technology could serve humanity without compromising the planet's future. His legacy, Musk realized, would not simply be defined by the products he created or the industries he disrupted. It would be defined by how he had changed the way the world thought about leadership, innovation, and the role of technology in society. The future of Musk's companies, and indeed the world, was no longer just about achieving technical breakthroughs. It was about creating a better, more sustainable future for everyone. And that future would be driven by the belief that humanity's progress was inseparable from its well-being. As Musk reflected on his journey, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had always believed in the power of innovation to change the world, but now, he realized that true change could only come when innovation was aligned with the principles of sustainability, balance, and human-centered purpose. The world was entering a new era, one where progress was not just measured by what we achieved but by how we achieved it. And Musk, at the helm of this new wave of innovation, was ready to lead the way. With a deep sense of purpose and a vision that spanned beyond Earth, Musk's work was just beginning. The future was bright, and it was driven by the idea that the best innovations were the ones that made the world a better place for everyone. In this new era, Musk had found his true calling, not just as an innovator, but as a steward of human progress. As Elon Musk's career advanced into new territories, from sustainable energy to the final frontier of space exploration, there was a subtle transformation taking place in him, one that was deeply personal. Over the years, Musk had driven himself to the brink of exhaustion, pushing the limits of his own body and mind to meet the ever-growing demands of his businesses. But it wasn't just his health that was affected. The sheer scale of his work meant that his personal relationships, too, had often been sidelined, and his personal life had become a series of sacrifices, particularly in the pursuit of professional greatness. Now, with his renewed focus on wellness, sustainability, and leadership, Musk was realizing the importance of reconnecting with humanity, not only as a global visionary but also in the intimate ways that make life meaningful. Musk had always been fiercely independent, the lone genius who pushed forward into uncharted territory. But as he moved through the more reflective phase of his life, he began to understand that the journey to success was not solely about individual achievement, it was about the collective effort, the people around him, and the interconnectedness of all things. There was no doubting that Musk's relentless drive had changed the course of history. His innovations had transformed industries and expanded the boundaries of human possibility. Yet with every breakthrough, there had been a price to pay. His personal life had often been a casualty of his work. His relationships with family and friends had been strained, and his own health had often been neglected in favor of his vision for the future. Musk's workaholic tendencies were legendary. In the early years of Tesla and SpaceX, he famously slept on the factory floor, sometimes working 100-hour weeks. He was consumed with the task at hand, creating the world's first truly mass-market electric car and revolutionizing space travel, and this dedication came at the cost of many things. Long hours at the office meant missing family milestones. His marriage to Tallulah Riley was a casualty of his inability to balance work and relationships. Despite his wealth and influence, Musk's personal life often felt like a house of cards, waiting to collapse under the weight of ambition. The pain of those sacrifices began to hit Musk in ways he hadn't anticipated. While he was achieving monumental success, the human side of his journey was more complicated. The quiet nights of solitude, the moments missed with loved ones, these began to gnaw at him, slowly eroding his sense of self. Musk had always viewed himself as a pioneer, but now he was starting to question whether it was worth it if the personal cost was so high. He had spent years focusing on the end goal, building a future where humanity could live on Mars, where electric cars were the norm, and where space exploration was as commonplace as flying to another country. But in doing so, he had lost sight of what made him human, the relationships, the bonds, and the sense of community that grounded his existence. It was during a brief sabbatical that Musk truly began to grasp the depth of what he had sacrificed. He took a week away from the endless meetings and technological designs, spending time with his children and reconnecting with his closest friends. This time of reflection gave him the space to reevaluate his priorities. Sitting on the balcony of a house in Malibu, Musk looked out at the ocean and thought about everything he had built, and everything that had been left behind in the pursuit of success. He felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the opportunities he had, but also a quiet sadness that many of the personal relationships in his life had suffered. In that moment, Musk understood something that had eluded him for years: true fulfillment was not just about changing the world, it was about the people you shared that world with. That week, Musk began to reevaluate his approach to work and life. He realized that the technology he was creating, the space rockets he was building, and the electric cars he was manufacturing were all part of a larger mission, one that required the support of a community. Without the people who believed in his vision and supported him along the way, his journey would have been incomplete. Armed with this new understanding of his humanity, Musk began to shift the way he led. Rather than focusing solely on the end product, he started placing more importance on the people who made those products possible. He began taking more time to connect with his employees, recognizing the importance of their well-being and mental health. He reached out to his family more often, making an effort to be present in their lives, even amidst his demanding schedule. At SpaceX, Musk introduced programs to support the personal development of his employees, including mindfulness workshops, flexible working hours, and a more inclusive work environment. At Tesla, he encouraged a culture where collaboration and emotional well-being were as important as technical innovation. Musk's new approach to leadership was grounded in empathy and a sense of shared purpose. He recognized that, as the leader of these groundbreaking companies, his role was not just to drive technological advancements, but to inspire and support those around him in a way that cultivated growth, creativity, and mutual respect. He also became more vocal about the need for work-life balance within the tech industry. In interviews, he began advocating for a sustainable approach to success, one where entrepreneurs could lead and innovate without sacrificing their personal lives or mental health. His new perspective resonated with many of his peers, especially in Silicon Valley, where burnout and overwork had become ubiquitous. As Musk's approach to leadership began to gain traction, the effects rippled through the tech world. His message about finding balance, prioritizing well-being, and maintaining strong personal connections became a new narrative in an industry that had long been defined by its cutthroat, work-obsessed culture. Industry leaders and entrepreneurs took note of Musk's shift. In a panel at the Global Leadership Summit, he spoke candidly about the importance of personal relationships in driving business success. "We have a tendency to glorify the hustle," Musk said, "but the truth is, no amount of success will make up for lost time with the people you love. And when you start prioritizing them, something amazing happens, you start to see your work in a new light." The tech industry, which had often been characterized by long hours and a culture of constant competition, began to slowly change. More companies started introducing wellness initiatives, focusing on mental health, and creating more flexible work environments. Musk had unknowingly started a movement, one that emphasized the value of human connection over relentless productivity. Even his competitors began to adopt similar practices. Companies like Google, Apple, and Amazon began integrating mindfulness programs and offering employees more time off to recharge. The shift wasn't instantaneous, but it was undeniable. Musk had become a role model, not just for innovation, but for the importance of leading with heart and authenticity. Musk's journey wasn't just about building futuristic technologies or conquering the stars. It was about rediscovering the very essence of what it meant to be human, to love, to connect, and to care for the world around you. As Musk continued to lead, he realized that his innovations, whether in electric cars, rockets, or renewable energy, were only part of the puzzle. The other part was the people who would benefit from them, the families who would live healthier lives thanks to Tesla's energy solutions, the astronauts who would journey to Mars, and the employees who would build these technologies together. Musk's reflection on his journey gave him a renewed sense of purpose. The future was not just about what technologies he could create, but about how those technologies would serve the collective good. And to achieve that, he knew he had to start with the most important element of all, humanity itself. In this chapter of his life, Musk was not only reinventing industries, he was redefining leadership, one that placed empathy, connection, and balance at the center of innovation. And in doing so, he had found a new kind of success, one that not only changed the world but also brought him closer to the people he valued most. As Musk reflected on his journey, he finally felt at peace. The future, it seemed, was not just bright, it was human. As the world continued to marvel at Elon Musk's innovations, another challenge loomed on the horizon, a challenge that would test not just his engineering genius but also the very essence of human willpower. Space exploration had always been a dream of humankind, one that had inspired countless individuals, generations, and civilizations. But the reality of living and thriving beyond Earth was still far from the realm of possibility. Musk knew this well, but it did not deter him. Instead, it fueled his relentless pursuit of turning science fiction into reality. The idea of colonizing Mars had never been more tangible, and with every successful Falcon 9 launch and the first steps taken by astronauts aboard SpaceX's Crew Dragon, Musk and his team were building the foundation for a multiplanetary future. But this next step, this great leap into the unknown, would require more than just rockets and spacecraft. It would require an entirely new mindset, a philosophy of perseverance, adaptability, and unity. In the depths of his mind, Musk had always felt that humanity's survival rested not just on technological advancements, but on our ability to think beyond the limits of what was possible. Space, with all its unforgiving vastness, was a place where humanity would be tested in ways it had never been before. To succeed in this next frontier, humanity needed more than just tools. It needed resilience. It needed community. And above all, it needed a new understanding of what it meant to be human. SpaceX had come a long way. What began as a small startup with a dream of reducing the cost of space travel had grown into one of the most successful private space companies in history. But Musk knew that the ultimate goal was not just to send rockets into space, it was to make space travel affordable and accessible to everyone. The goal of landing humans on Mars was no longer a distant fantasy. It was achievable, but the path was fraught with enormous technical, financial, and logistical challenges. The development of Starship was Musk's answer to those challenges. Unlike the Falcon series, which had been designed for smaller payloads, Starship was being designed as a fully reusable spacecraft capable of carrying a vast number of passengers, equipment, and supplies. Musk was pushing the boundaries of engineering and testing the limits of physics in his quest to make space travel not only possible but sustainable. For months, SpaceX engineers worked day and night to refine the Starship prototype. They tested the spacecraft in extreme conditions, firing its engines, testing its heat shields, and simulating flights. The tests were far from flawless, and each failure brought new lessons. But Musk had long been accustomed to failure as a necessary step in the process of innovation. Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough, Musk said in an interview shortly after one of the Starship prototypes exploded during a test. We learn more from failure than we do from success. Each failure brought new insights, and slowly but surely, Starship began to take shape. Musk envisioned a world where millions of people could travel to Mars, not just once, but regularly. In his mind, Mars would become a thriving colony, a second home for humanity. It wasn't just about escaping Earth's problems, it was about expanding the possibilities for the human race. But to get there, Musk knew that more than just technology would be needed. The journey would require something deeper, a unified vision and a shared understanding of what humanity could achieve together. As Musk's teams worked tirelessly on the technical aspects of the Mars mission, another crucial element was on his mind, the psychological toll of long-term space travel. Traveling to Mars would take months, if not years, and the isolation, physical strain, and psychological pressure would be unlike anything humans had ever experienced. Musk knew that in order to make the journey feasible, the psychological aspects of space travel needed to be addressed. In the early days of space exploration, astronauts were celebrated as heroes, but the mental health of those heroes was often overlooked. The pressure of spending months in confined, isolated environments, away from family and friends, could lead to depression, anxiety, and even severe psychological breakdowns. Musk was acutely aware of this challenge and began working with psychologists and mental health experts to develop strategies for keeping astronauts mentally and emotionally healthy during extended missions. SpaceX began testing its own team members by simulating long-duration space missions. They confined engineers and astronauts to small, enclosed spaces for extended periods, replicating the conditions they would face on Mars. They monitored their mental health, their ability to work in teams, and their adaptability to extreme conditions. These tests were essential for understanding the challenges astronauts would face during interplanetary missions. "We're not just sending a spaceship to Mars," Musk said in one of his many speeches about the Mars mission. "We're sending people. We need to think about the people on board, the psychological impact of the journey, and how we can ensure they are not just surviving, but thriving." The importance of mental health and teamwork would be at the core of any successful Mars mission. Musk realized that the people who traveled to Mars would not only need to be physically fit. They would need to be mentally resilient, adaptable, and capable of working in extreme isolation. As Musk's plans for Mars progressed, he also began to consider the ethical implications of colonizing another planet. The idea of sending humanity to Mars was undoubtedly exciting, but what would it mean for the planet, and for the people who would eventually call it home? Musk was driven by the belief that humanity needed a backup plan for survival. But as he shared his vision for Mars with the public, he found that not everyone agreed with his approach. Some questioned whether humanity should be trying to colonize another planet when there were still so many issues to address on Earth. Others worried about the potential environmental impact of colonization, fearing that humanity would simply repeat the same mistakes on Mars that had been made on Earth. Musk, however, remained steadfast in his belief that humanity's long-term survival depended on becoming a multiplanetary species. But he was also acutely aware that the process of colonization had to be approached responsibly. "We can't simply take the same mistakes we've made on Earth and repeat them on Mars," Musk explained. "We have to be mindful of the long-term impacts of our presence on another planet. We have to protect it, preserve it, and make sure that any life we create on Mars is sustainable." This philosophy of ethical colonization became a cornerstone of Musk's approach to space exploration. He spoke frequently about the need to preserve the natural beauty of Mars, to create sustainable habitats, and to avoid disrupting any potential life forms that might exist on the planet. For Musk, colonization was not about conquering a new world. It was about learning from the past and forging a path forward that ensured humanity's survival without repeating the mistakes of history. With every successful test and every milestone achieved, Musk's vision for Mars became a reality in the minds of many. The journey to Mars was no longer just a dream, it was becoming a possibility. But as with any great endeavor, there were setbacks, challenges, and moments of doubt. The road to Mars would not be an easy one, but Musk's vision and determination never wavered. In the end, the mission was bigger than just Musk. It was about humanity's collective will to explore, to push beyond our limits, and to reach for something greater than ourselves. The dream of Mars, once considered a mere fantasy, was now on the brink of becoming a new chapter in human history. And as Musk looked out at the stars, he knew one thing for certain: the journey to the stars had only just begun. As SpaceX prepared for its next big step, the first human mission to Mars, Musk's excitement was palpable. This was the moment he had spent his entire career working toward. But more importantly, it was the moment when humanity would step into the vast unknown, together. The future was open, and the stars were waiting. While Elon Musk's innovations were shaping the future, those closest to him began to notice a growing divide. The further he advanced into the realm of space exploration, the more it seemed like the cost of his vision was becoming unbearable, not just for him, but for everyone who stood by him. His relentless pursuit of Mars, sustainable energy, and electric cars had propelled him to the top, but at a cost that was beginning to feel unsustainable. Musk's ability to focus exclusively on his goals had always been one of his greatest strengths, but now it was beginning to drive a wedge between him and the people he cared about the most. His employees were working harder than ever, often pushing beyond the limits of what seemed humanly possible. His friends, too, felt the strain as he grew more distant, consumed by his need to change the world. And even his family, once a grounding force in his life, started to suffer from his absence, physically, emotionally, and mentally. The question that began to loom over Musk was not whether his vision was worth it, but whether his life, as it was truly worth living in the long term. Elon Musk's name was synonymous with innovation. He had single-handedly transformed industries that seemed unmovable and set the stage for humanity's leap beyond Earth. Tesla's electric cars had become the face of green transportation, SpaceX's rockets were regularly launching into space, and the concept of a Mars colony was no longer science fiction. But amid all the achievements, there was a relentless pressure to keep up. Not just from investors, the media, or the public, but from within. Musk held himself to an unyielding standard, one that demanded nothing less than perfection. To fall short was inconceivable. To fail was a personal failure that weighed on him more heavily than anyone could understand. The success of his companies was a testament to his ability to push through adversity, but at what cost? Musk had always been able to compartmentalize, keeping his personal life separate from his work. But now, his work was consuming every waking moment of his life. His relationships, once a source of joy and grounding, were becoming strained. His ex-wives, who had shared the early years of his rise to fame, were critical of how little time he dedicated to the family. Musk's kids, though proud of their father's accomplishments, were growing increasingly alienated from him. There was an unspoken rift that grew wider with each launch, each breakthrough, each new goal that pushed him further from those who had once been his emotional anchor. He had always believed that his work would provide the answers to humanity's greatest problems. But now, as he looked at the people around him, he began to realize that he had failed to solve the most basic problem of all, finding balance between his ambitions and his relationships. The breaking point came after one particularly challenging month. SpaceX had experienced a series of setbacks, and the pressure was building to complete a critical project on schedule. Tesla's stock had taken a dip, and he was inundated with media questions about whether he could pull it back up. Every time he picked up the phone or answered an email, it was a crisis, and his mind couldn't escape the constant whirlwind of problems that needed his attention. That was when Musk's oldest son, XAEA-12, did something unexpected. Musk had been struggling with the fact that his son, who was only a few years old, didn't really understand why his father was never around. One evening, after an incredibly exhausting day, Musk had just returned home to a quiet house, his mind still racing from the day's chaos. XAEA-12 came running up to him with a toy rocket ship in his hand, holding it up in front of his father's face. "Daddy, is this the rocket you made?" the little boy asked, his eyes filled with innocent wonder. Musk froze. His heart sank. For all the grand ambitions he had, all the rockets and space missions, all the billions of dollars and years of work, he realized in that moment that he was failing at the most important mission of all, being a present father. The joy that his son found in his work that was supposed to benefit the world, was lost on him because he wasn't there to experience it with him. That evening, Musk found himself sitting on the porch of his house, staring out at the stars, questioning everything. He thought about the mission to Mars, the sustainable future he was working to create, and the people who had supported him along the way. But in that quiet moment, as the night stretched on, he also thought about the cost, the sacrifices that were becoming impossible to ignore. Musk had always been driven by a single-minded purpose, to change the world. But that purpose was no longer enough to silence the voice that told him he had neglected the people who had helped him along the way. In his pursuit of the future, he had inadvertently neglected the present, the people closest to him, the relationships that grounded him, the family that needed him. For the first time, Musk allowed himself to feel vulnerable, a feeling he had spent much of his life resisting. He realized that in his quest to change the world, he had neglected his own personal world. The world of love, friendship, and human connection. Musk began to reflect on his journey. His leadership had always been fueled by a desire to make humanity better, to make life on Earth more sustainable and to create a backup plan for humanity on Mars. But now, it was clear to him that the path to real success had to include a balance between personal and professional fulfillment. Without his relationships, his work seemed empty. Without love, camaraderie, and the grounding force of human connection, his achievements felt hollow. He knew the journey ahead would be difficult. The Mars mission was still on the horizon, and the work at Tesla and SpaceX was far from over. But for the first time, Musk began to think about how he could not only build a better future for humanity but also a better future for himself, a future where his work and his relationships coexisted in harmony. Musk's newfound awareness did not happen overnight. It took months of reflection, honest conversations with friends, family, and colleagues, and a reassessment of what mattered most in life. He began to openly address the personal sacrifices he had made along the way and, more importantly, what he intended to do about it moving forward. He made a promise to himself and to his loved ones that he would prioritize his family, making an effort to be more present in their lives. He began to delegate more responsibilities at SpaceX and Tesla, allowing his teams to take on more of the workload. His management style shifted, he focused more on nurturing relationships, not just within his companies, but with the people around him. He also started sharing more about the challenges he faced with his team, encouraging them to be open about their own struggles. This openness helped foster a deeper sense of connection and mutual support among his colleagues. At the same time, Musk became more vocal about the need for balance in the tech and entrepreneurial world. He spoke candidly about the dangers of burnout and the importance of mental health in high-pressure environments. Musk became a strong advocate for leaders in all industries to recognize that their success should never come at the expense of their well-being or their personal lives. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, Musk had finally found a new equilibrium. He had always been driven by a singular vision of changing the world. Now, he was learning to embrace the world as it was, complete with its imperfections, relationships, and the joy that came from simply being present in the lives of those he loved. And in that balance, he found something even more powerful than his visionary ideas, a life lived fully, with purpose, love, and human connection. The journey to Mars was still on track, but the mission to redefine success was one he would take with him, wherever the future might lead. The months following Elon Musk's deep personal reflection had been a period of growth and evolution, both for him as a leader and for the companies he spearheaded. The world watched with bated breath as SpaceX's Starship program continued its development, a crucial piece of Musk's larger dream to make humanity a multiplanetary species. But for Musk, the mission had taken on new significance. The dream of colonizing Mars was no longer simply about advancing technology or securing a future for humanity, it had become a personal mission of renewal. A new beginning. As SpaceX's rockets continued to launch successfully, the vision of a sustainable colony on Mars began to feel not just achievable, but inevitable. But despite all the technological breakthroughs and the immense resources poured into the mission, Musk knew that the real challenge lay ahead, the human element. Sending rockets and machinery to Mars was one thing, but sending people to stay, to thrive, and to create a self-sustaining colony was an entirely different endeavor. It required more than just advanced rockets and life support systems. It required culture, governance, and most importantly, unity. Mars was a hostile environment, but Musk believed it could become humanity's second home. But this would take more than just ambition, it would take careful planning, leadership, and a radical rethinking of how humans could live together in such an extreme environment. The question wasn't just how to survive on Mars, but how to create a thriving society, built on cooperation and innovation. The first step in creating a permanent Mars colony was sending the first batch of astronauts, scientists, engineers, and visionaries, on a one-way trip to Mars. These pioneers would be the first humans to touch the Martian surface and would lay the groundwork for future colonists. SpaceX had already conducted numerous successful tests of the Starship, but the real test would come when humans were aboard, facing the challenges of long-term space travel, isolation, and the unforgiving conditions on the Red Planet. The launch of the first crewed mission to Mars was a milestone that many had dreamed of for decades. For Musk, it was a culmination of his life's work. But for the astronauts on board, it was the beginning of an unimaginable journey. As the countdown for the historic launch ticked down, Musk stood in front of a monitor, surrounded by his closest advisors and engineers. He was calm on the outside, but inside, a torrent of emotions stirred. This was it. The moment he had been working toward, sacrificing for, and dreaming about for years was about to unfold. 10 seconds to launch, the voice on the intercom broke through the silence. Musk nodded, a slight smile on his face. He had done everything he could to prepare for this moment. The rocket was ready. The astronauts were ready. Humanity was ready. The engines roared to life, and the massive Starship lifted off from the Earth's surface, soaring into the atmosphere with a deafening sound. The entire world watched in awe as the first human-crewed spacecraft bound for Mars began its journey into the unknown. But as the spaceship ascended higher into the sky, Musk's thoughts turned to the bigger picture, the next step. The first mission was just the beginning. This first wave of colonists would establish the infrastructure needed to support a growing population. The success or failure of this mission would determine the course of humanity's future on Mars. The first challenge the Mars colonists faced was, as Musk had predicted, the Martian environment itself. The gravity was a third of Earth's, making everyday tasks more difficult. The atmosphere was thin, and the temperature hovered around -80 degrees Fahrenheit. Dust storms could rage for months, blocking out the sun and plunging the planet into darkness. The colonists would need to rely on advanced technology to stay alive. The habitats that SpaceX and other partnering organizations had designed were meant to provide safety, shelter, and life support. These inflatable, self-sustaining domes were equipped with oxygen generators, water filtration systems, and temperature regulation units. But even the best technology could not fully prepare the astronauts for the psychological effects of being so far from Earth. Living in close quarters, with no escape from each other, isolation was one of the most significant challenges. The psychological strain of living on Mars was unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. Musk knew that to truly thrive, the people of Mars would need to adapt, not just physically, but emotionally. Creating a supportive and cooperative community was paramount. Musk had long believed that the key to overcoming this challenge was fostering an environment of transparency, open communication, and shared purpose. He made sure that the first few colonies included experts in psychology, sociology, and communication, people who could help the pioneers navigate the inevitable difficulties of such an isolated existence. The success of this mission depends not only on technology but on how we work together as a community, Musk said in one of his early interviews after the first crew arrived on Mars. We can't let isolation tear us apart. We have to build relationships that will allow us to thrive. As the days turned into weeks and months, the pioneers on Mars started to realize that the real challenge wasn't just survival, it was building a new society from the ground up. Musk's vision for Mars was not just about creating a colony, it was about creating a new model for human society. One that would be sustainable, ethical, and resilient in the face of adversity. The question of governance quickly arose. On Earth, nations were governed by laws and treaties that had evolved over centuries. But Mars was a new world, one that did not belong to any nation. In Musk's mind, the governance of Mars would have to be based on cooperation and shared responsibility, not on national interests or power struggles. The colonists agreed on a set of fundamental principles: preserving the environment, promoting scientific discovery, and ensuring that everyone had a voice in the decisions that affected them. Mars would be governed by a council, made up of representatives from various fields, including science, engineering, ethics, and psychology. Musk's idea was not to impose a top-down structure, but to foster a more organic, community-driven model where decisions were made collectively. Mars is not a place for war or conflict, Musk had said in a message to the first settlers. It is a place for collaboration and unity. Together, we can build something that will last, a society where every voice matters. Sustainability was also a central focus of the Mars colony. Musk's long-standing commitment to renewable energy had informed the design of the colony. Solar panels and wind turbines powered the habitats and infrastructure. Advanced agriculture techniques allowed for the cultivation of food on Martian soil, using hydroponics and other innovative methods. Waste recycling and water purification systems ensured that nothing was wasted. The colony was designed to be self-sufficient, but Musk knew that the key to long-term success was cooperation with Earth. The first few years would be critical in establishing a foundation for a thriving colony. And that foundation needed to be built not just on technology, but on the relationships between people. It was not enough to survive on Mars, humanity needed to create a new way of living, one that could sustain the future generations to come. As the first few years passed, the Mars colony began to take shape. New settlers arrived, and the population slowly grew. The infrastructure expanded, with new domes, new farms, and new laboratories springing up across the Martian landscape. The technology to produce oxygen, water, and food became more refined, and soon the colony was able to sustain itself without relying on Earth. But the journey was far from over. Musk's vision for Mars extended beyond just the establishment of a colony. Mars, in his mind, would be a launch pad for humanity's future, one where we could explore the outer reaches of the solar system and beyond. Mars would be the first step in a grand journey to the stars, a journey that Musk believed was essential for humanity's survival. The success of the Mars colony would not just mark a new chapter in space exploration. It would mark the beginning of a new era for humanity. An era where the stars were no longer just a dream, but a destination within reach. And as Musk looked toward the stars, he knew one thing for certain: the adventure was just beginning. For Musk, the establishment of the Mars colony was both the end of one journey and the beginning of another. As the first successful human settlement on Mars began to thrive, his vision for a multiplanetary future took root. But more than anything, he had come to understand something deeper than any scientific breakthrough or technological achievement: what it meant to build something that would endure for generations. In that moment, as he looked out across the Martian horizon, he saw not just the beginning of a new era for humanity, but the lasting legacy of a dream that had once seemed impossible. A dream that was now, undeniably, within reach. The colony on Mars had become a thriving testament to human ingenuity, the realization of a dream that many had once thought impossible. As the first settlers continued to expand the colony, creating new infrastructure and research centers, Elon Musk found himself facing a moment of deep reflection. The journey to this point had been long and fraught with difficulties, but it had led humanity to a place that only he had dared to envision. Mars was no longer a distant hope, but a reality. Yet, even as Mars flourished, Musk knew that his journey was far from over. The future of humanity wasn't just about surviving on Mars, it was about continuing to push boundaries, to explore the unknown, and to safeguard the future of life itself. But what did all this mean for him personally? And how did he reconcile the cost of his monumental ambition with the people and relationships that had helped him get there? Elon Musk had always been driven by the desire to leave a lasting legacy. He was well aware that his work on Earth and Mars would be remembered as part of humanity's journey into space. But the question that haunted him as he looked out at the red Martian horizon was not about how history would remember him. It was about what he had learned along the way, what sacrifices had been made, both by him and those who had stood by him. Musk had always believed that his work was worth the sacrifices. After all, the survival of humanity and the colonization of another planet were monumental accomplishments. But now, as he stood on the precipice of this new era, he realized that the real cost of his success had not been in dollars or hours worked, but in the things that could never be recovered: the lost moments with his family, the years spent chasing a dream that sometimes felt too distant from the present reality. His mind often wandered back to the times when he was consumed by the desire to change the world. At SpaceX, he had built a company from the ground up, fighting against overwhelming odds to launch rockets that would ultimately carry people to Mars. At Tesla, he had revolutionized the electric car industry and pushed the boundaries of sustainable energy. But at what cost? Would humanity's ascent to the stars be worth the personal sacrifices he had made along the way? In the early days of the Mars colony, Musk had made it a point to stay in regular communication with the settlers. His updates were filled with hope and pride, but they were also tinged with a quiet sadness. Despite the success of the mission, he felt a deep isolation, a distance from the very people he had worked so tirelessly to bring to this point. Technology had made communication between Mars and Earth possible, but it still wasn't the same as being there in person. His sense of connection to the people he loved most, the people he had left behind on Earth, had grown more distant. But one afternoon, as he was reviewing the latest reports from Mars, a message came through that shook him to his core. It was from his son, XAEA-12, who had just sent him a video message from Earth. In the video, XAEA-12 was holding up a drawing of the Mars colony, complete with rockets, domes, and people walking on the surface of the planet. His son looked directly into the camera and spoke. "Daddy, look. I made the colony. Is it just like you said? Are you there now? Do you miss me?" Musk's heart clenched. The innocence in his son's voice was a sharp reminder of what he had been absent for. The years he had spent away, working relentlessly, had come at a cost that could never be undone. He had spent so much time thinking about the future, about Mars, about humanity's potential, that he had lost touch with the present. He realized in that moment that while his dream of a multiplanetary future was becoming a reality, it had come at the expense of being the father he had always hoped to be. Musk spent the next few days in quiet reflection, staring out at the stars from his office in the SpaceX headquarters. The view of the Earth from space had always inspired him, but now, it felt different. There was a profound sense of both accomplishment and loss. Mars had become a shining example of human progress, but he could not ignore the deep yearning for human connection that he felt. He had built the future, but had he neglected the people who mattered most in the process? He thought about the pioneers on Mars, the settlers who had made the journey to start a new chapter for humanity. Their bravery, their sacrifices, their unwavering belief in the future, had been what made the mission possible. But now, as the colony continued to grow, he wondered if the real challenge would be creating a future where people didn't just survive, but lived meaningfully and joyfully. Musk had often said that the purpose of creating a multiplanetary future was to ensure the survival of humanity. But now, he saw that there was another part of survival that was equally important: emotional survival. The survival of love, of relationships, of community. Those things couldn't be engineered by rockets or technology, they had to be nurtured and cared for, just like the Mars colony's food and water systems. In the quiet of his office, Musk had an epiphany. The future he had envisioned was not just about rockets, solar panels, and sustainable cities on Mars. It was about humanity's ability to connect, to build not just machines, but meaningful relationships. He realized that as much as he had pushed to bring humanity to the stars, the most important work was still to be done on Earth, in the hearts and minds of people. He made a decision then, a decision that would forever change the way he approached his work. Mars was important, but it could not be the sole focus of his life anymore. It was time to reconnect with his family, to be there for his children, to build the relationships that had been neglected in the pursuit of the future. He would continue his work with SpaceX, Tesla, and the Mars mission, but he would also find a balance, one that honored both the future and the present. He reached out to his ex-wives, to his children, and to those closest to him, apologizing for the time lost, for the moments that could never be regained. And as he sent his messages, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. The journey to Mars had been extraordinary, but the journey to rediscover the importance of human connection was the true mission of his life. As the first human colony on Mars continued to thrive, Musk knew that the real legacy he would leave behind would not just be one of technological triumph, but one of personal growth, connection, and understanding. Mars was the future, but love, family, and the bonds between people, those would always be the heart of what it meant to be human. In his final message to the people of Earth and Mars, Musk shared a reflection that would become his guiding principle moving forward. Humanity's future in the stars is inevitable, but let's not forget that the stars we reach for are not just out there in the universe. They are in the hearts of the people we love, the relationships we nurture, and the communities we build. The greatest achievement of all is not just the dream of reaching Mars, but the connections we make along the way. And as he looked once more to the stars, Musk smiled, knowing that both his work and his heart had found a new direction. One that embraced the past, the present, and the future in a way that was more profound than he had ever imagined. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?